reached the appointed hour of 1 o'clock. So Michael, can you confirm for me that you're able to start the recording now?
Yeah, I see. Karen, I see that it is recording at the top.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Before we begin, I just want to let all of the board members and individuals who are participating as attendees in our meeting today know that this meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made publicly available as soon as it is processed through Zoom's cloud system. So just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that as we're going through our proceedings today. Karen, we have reached the 1 o'clock time to begin the board meeting, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to you.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Karen Farmer-White, Chair of the State Board of Education, and I'd like to call to order the 356th meeting of the State Board of Education. I'd like to thank board members again for being nimble as we navigate our second virtual meeting in response to circumstances of international concern. These past few weeks have required flexibility and sacrifices from citizens across the Commonwealth. I sincerely appreciate the efforts of essential workers involved in delivering medical care, sustaining our food supply, maintaining law enforcement and fire services, and supporting other critical needs. I'd also like to acknowledge the resourcefulness of our educators to deploy new plans for instruction and embark on a different construct for learning with little notice. This week happens to be Teacher Appreciation Week. While we may not be celebrating together in classrooms, our educators continue to support their students through an unprecedented set of circumstances, and I want all of Pennsylvania's teachers to know that your efforts are recognized, your dedication is valued, and your commitment is admirable. Our agenda today will include a report from Deputy Secretary Matt Stem, a status report to update our science standards from Judd Pittman, the Secretary's special advisor on STEM, a briefing on school district organization standards from our legal counsel, Tom Howell, and discussion surrounding time frame on the outstanding matter of the Erie County Community College Plan. We'll consider action items relevant to those briefings at the end of the meeting, and also we'll take time to recognize the contributions of members whose service is coming to a close. I'm saddened that we can't be together to say goodbye to our student members, Aaron Pratt and Ashley Sveck, whose terms as advisors to the board end today. This month, Aaron will complete degrees in biology, pre-med, and psychology at Cheney University, and Ashley will graduate from Norwin High School and go on to pursue higher education studies in cardiovascular perfusion. We'll take time at the end of the meeting to appropriately recognize their contributions, along with those of our former colleague, Kirk Hallett, who resigned from board service earlier this year. I'd also like to share that Ava Rankin has been selected as our new high school student member-elect. Ava is a rising junior at Upper St. Clair School District, and I look forward to having her start her term as an advisory member of the board in July. Before we turn to our business this afternoon, I'd like to address the logistics of how we will conduct this virtual meeting. All state board members participating in this webinar have permission that should allow you to ask questions and deliberate about our discussion items as they are being presented. Members of the public will be muted during time for presentations by the department and discussion by the board. When we arrive at each opportunity for public comment, I will ask members of the public who are participating via webinar to indicate if they wish to speak by selecting the raise your hand icon located on the toolbar on the bottom of your screen. Staff will unmute you one at a time to make comment, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Members of the public who are participating only via teleconference will be unmuted and have an opportunity to provide comment after those participating via webinar. Before I proceed, are there any questions from the members of the board about the meeting format before we move ahead with our business? Okay. At this time, I'd like to ask Stephanie to call roll for attendance.
Mr. Agris,
Here.
Honorable Achel,
Here.
Dr. Barker,
Here.
Mr. Barrett. I know that Nathan is on the Zoom somehow, but he cannot hear me. So I will skip to the next person. Dr. Bracy Green,
Here.
Dr. Carnicella, Dr. Carnicella. Okay. Senator Dinniman, Ms. Dungy Glenn,
Here.
Ms. Griffin,
Here.
Dr. Gunter Smith,
Here.
Dr. Keeling,
Here.
Honorable Lolly Green, Senator Langerholt.
Here.
Thank you. Dr. Perry,
Here.
Ms. Pratt,
Here.
Representative Roebuck, Representative Sonny,
Here.
Ms. Svek,
Here.
Ms. Swigard, Ms. Farmer White,
Here.
Dr. Williams, Dr. Williams,
Here.
and Dr. Carnicella.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you,
And
Stephanie.
We're good. We're good, Karen,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Stephanie, for the record, Nathan Barrett is in here.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Karen. Okay, Karen, that concludes the roll call, and we're ready to move to the next portion of
Okay.
the agenda.
Our first item of business is approval of the minutes from our March 18th, 2020 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
Yes, it's Carol Achel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was in
Hi,
attendance.
Carol.
I was in attendance on the phone for the last meeting, and it doesn't show on your minutes. Would you please correct that?
Okay.
Yes, Carol, I have since corrected it, and they are able to be viewed on the SharePoint site.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Sure.
Is there a motion to approve with those corrections?
So moved. Agris?
Okay. Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. At this time, I'd like to recognize Matt Sim, Deputy Secretary of Elementary and Secondary Education, for a report on the department's efforts in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and a federal waiver of certain elements of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Mr. Stem, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Karen. First, I want to start by thanking the State Board for your leadership throughout this crisis. You know, we've learned and continue to learn a lot each day as we're navigating these unprecedented times. And, you know, one of the things that we're reminded of is that, you know, each of our state board members, your leaders, not only at a statewide level, but also within your communities and the other organizations in which you serve. So let me begin by thanking each of you for your service and reminding you that it's both valued and appreciated. And then speaking of appreciation, also to echo what had been shared earlier, Appreciation Week. And I want to take a moment to reiterate on behalf of the Secretary some of the remarks that he shared earlier this week in a video over social media. And as he reminded our communities that although our world has drastically changed, one thing that hasn't changed is the ability that teachers have to make a difference in the lives of students. And with classrooms closed, our teachers are placed in new environments and are paving new paths. They've been doing whatever it takes to stay connected to students in new and innovative ways. They're providing hope, they're providing stability, and they're providing support for both our students and their families. And so during this Teacher Appreciation Week, on behalf of the Secretary and our entire administration, we want to thank our teachers for their commitment, their flexibility, their ingenuity, and for ensuring that learning continues even in these difficult times. So for all of our teachers that are here at the meeting, and for those that see this video, again, we thank you for all that you do. So to share a little bit about what's been happening in recent weeks, I have about 3 or 4 update items, most related to the COVID-related closures of schools. Throughout this pandemic, the administration's top priority and our education leaders has been ensuring the health and safety of our students and our broader school communities, including staff, parents, families, and school communities. And so our role at the department from the very beginning back in March has been to provide technical assistance, support, guidance, and resources to our administrators, teachers, and staff around the state who are working so hard to meet the needs of all children while schools have been closed, and to ensure that we're doing everything we can to support schools to continue to educate students. So a few things of note. Number one, we have been partnering very extensively with our 29 intermediate units, and I want to take a moment to commend our entire intermediate unit system for their responsiveness and collaboration throughout these past number of months. Within just a few weeks of extended closures, our intermediate unit system, in collaboration with the department, developed a technical assistance and support system to be able to provide direct support to our superintendents and our teachers and their teams around how to continue education through either digital technologies and strategies to also non-digital technologies and strategies, and providing not only that direct support, but also connecting and sharing resources across the Commonwealth, so that as as a school district in the Northeast figured out a strategy to meet needs, that they were able to share that strategy with districts in other parts of the state through that connectivity through our intermediate units. And through that network, our intermediate units have provided technical assistance to over 400 school districts and LEAs, which is the large portion of our school districts and charters in the Commonwealth. Second, in addition to that support network, one of the other strategies we were able to employ very early on was, as a state, we realized that there were a number of districts and other public charters and other public schools that did not currently have direct access to online learning programming. And so one of the things that the administration and our team at PDE put in place by the first week of April was to allow access for any student in the Commonwealth whose districts wanted to participate to online teaching and learning platform, which includes at the high school level every content area, all of the major content areas and subcourses, and also including AP courses, some CTE courses, and the like. And we were able to offer that for all high schools. And then at the elementary level, we were able to offer their core instructional courses, particularly in literacy and mathematics. And as a result of that, we were quite honestly, as we projected the need became very real. And we've had now over 125 districts and charter schools that have participated and signed up for these online courses that we've offered. There are over 200,000 students in grades K through 8 are now accessing these free resources we provided, and over 183,000 students at the 6 through 12 level are accessing these resources. And so we have over 380,000 students that are participating in online coursework that we were able to provide to them. Third, our team has been partnering extensively with public television. We recognize that and to be fully transparent, as with most states, we have equity and opportunity gaps that exist for a variety of reasons, from our urban areas and also very significant in our rural areas. And knowing that, and knowing some of the limitations in broadband access and technology, we've been working diligently with PBS partners to do everything we can to offer instructional resources vis-a-vis television programming. And so all eight of our regions, our PBS regions, have been able to broadcast content, even including teacher-developed content, that they're able to access more of their students through that content. And then what we've also been developing are offline resources, so lesson plans and templates and other non-digital materials that go along with the PBS programming to do everything we can to support districts in reaching students that may not have the same level of access with broadband. Third, our Pennsylvania Technical Training Network, which is an extension of PDE, and we call them PATN, have provided on their website resources for not only for educators, but also for parents and for students around specific, not only instructional practices for all students, but also some very intentional activities and lessons for students with IEPs or other students with disabilities who have unique challenges in a distance learning environment. And through that patent support, we've now trained over 1,000 educators in increasing distance learning strategies, as well as we've also been able to offer trainings for hundreds of parents in that process as well. So we also appreciate our patent partners for stepping up and leading in this space to provide some very intentional resources along those lines. Lastly, in this space, I would remind everyone that one of the other areas that the department we've been focusing our energies on is how to communicate with all of our stakeholders given the new normal. Again, as we all know, our education system moving from a school-based environment to students in their homes has raised a myriad of questions, and we know it's important to get real-time information out and current information the best that we're able to. So for those that have not seen it, if anyone goes to our Department of Education website, you will find an entire page on COVID frequently asked questions. And each day we review those, we update them with the latest information that we have in order to address the types of questions that exist and to build as much clarity as we can throughout this process. And so, we know that as we look forward, there's still gaps to fill. We've got to look ahead to the summer and fall. This fall, we're very much hoping to see school as I guess we would say, business as usual, but at the same time, we're preparing for the worst, and we have to prepare for the event that there would be disruptions to what teaching and learning looks like in the fall. So as we prepare, we're going to continue to work on guidance for what safe operations will look like in schools, how to continue to elevate teaching and learning strategies that allow for continuity of education. We are going to continue to focus heavily on equity and access. We still have tremendous equity and access needs across the Commonwealth. This isn't unique to Pennsylvania. Every state wrestles with this, but a crisis like this further reminds us of some of the challenges that many of our students, families, and communities from urban to rural still continue to face. And so we're going to focus on equity and access and make sure that we're not losing sight of student wellness. We know and we continue to hear from students and families that the time away from their friends and their time away from school and some of the feeling of isolation that they have is generating emotional needs and among our students. And so we have to make sure we're also attending to that for our families as well, making sure that we are providing resources to assist families who, and I'm sure many, if not most, that are here on this meeting are finding yourselves, working from home and also trying to help educate your child. And so much of this is new for PDE as well, but we're going to just know that in all of our conversations and our planning, we continue to keep on the at the forefront how we can equip parents in this new normal in which we find ourselves now. So that's my update specifically around what's been happening in the COVID space in recent weeks. The only other item I wanted to share, if I may, during my update, and then I know we have a presentation, an exciting presentation on science standards, but I also want to signal that earlier this week, PDE submitted its elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund application to the U.S. Department of Education. The U.S. Department of Education made available federal funding to states to be used to meet the specific needs, one-time funding to meet specific needs related to COVID-19 impacts. So Pennsylvania earlier this week applied for the $523.8 million made available to the state. And our next steps in that space are going to be, as we get into the days ahead, we're going to finalize a streamlined CARES subgrant application in consultation with key stakeholders, and making sure that the application is built in such a way that requires LEAs to describe the procedures for evaluating their local COVID-19 impacts in relation to education programming and delivery. And so the areas of emphasis in which districts can leverage that funding include addressing the learning loss associated with extended school closure, outlining the development of local continuity of education plans through the course of the emergency and how those continue to be expanded, detailing the supports for vulnerable student populations and families, and identifying core strategies and implementing core strategies to guide the investment in funds, particularly for vulnerable populations. And so, we're going to continue to expedite the grant approval process. We're going to keep equity at the center of local planning, and would again just remind everyone that these federal funds are one-time funds. And so, we will need to continue to ensure that that districts and schools are well resourced moving forward to best ensure our students' long-term success. So I believe that concludes my update. Thank you.
Deputy Secretary Stem, just wanted to take a minute to thank Deputy Secretary Ortega and Secretary of Education Rivera for all of your just tremendous work to help our students and our state manage COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Matt, thank you for that extensive report. I do have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
And they are grounded in my home district, Philadelphia, thinking about the challenges the district is faced even before this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges they're facing now. Understanding that in many of our districts, the distance learning is going to be spotty at best, just because of what you mentioned, real differences in access and equity around whether it's access to the internet and sometimes even situations around hardware. What is the thinking from the department around using the summer and whatever the new normal is in the next school year around use of extended day time through our schools? And has there been any thought given to how nonprofits, community organizations can work together to support out of school time, extended day learning opportunities to try to make up for these hundreds of hours that our children are missing? I'm working with some folks in Philadelphia to think about a community-led education recovery plan. And I'd just like to know how the department may be thinking about that as we proceed in our planning.
That's an excellent and timely question. As fate would have it, yesterday I was on the phone with one of our community-based advocate organization that does a lot of direct work in challenged communities, and we just had this identical conversation. And so I'll reiterate what I had shared with this organization, and that is that this is a time where our schools are going to need their community partners more than ever. And so there is absolutely a role for community-based organizations to help stand in the gap in several ways. So first of all, in providing, as you say, extended day and extended school year activities. All of the above will help to close the gaps that many of our students are going to see. In a traditional, just for context, in a traditional school year, students lose roughly 25% of their learning over the period of a summer if they don't have access to continued learning. So we project, and many states are projecting right now, we could have students with learning loss of 30, 35% or more, given the extended nature of closures and the disruption to learning. So our community-based organizations that offer extended day and extended year are absolutely engaging in the right types of activities, and we will try and find every way we can to support and encourage and foster and facilitate those partnerships. But the second one, if I may also highlight on behalf of our community-based organizations, is the work with families. And one of the things that we continue to see and hear on a daily basis is that we have parents that are also parents and guardians and other caregivers that are looking for support and guidance on how they can continue to support learning in the home and continue to partner with their schools, and also, quite frankly, continue to prepare for childcare and other challenges that they're facing. So so a long answer to your question, it's not only something that we approve of, but we quite frankly think it will be a necessity for many of our communities, and we will continue to encourage districts to partner with such organizations.
Thank you for that, man. Just one quick follow-up.
Sure.
The department could think about what professional development for those kinds of networks, those community-based networks, around how to use distance learning, because the whole idea is to be able to support what's going on in schools and to be supplemental and definitely not undermining anything that's taking place during the school day. And that might require some supports and helps for those who will be working through those community networks to know how to best support children in their learning with some professional development.
That's good feedback. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a quick question related to the funding that was mentioned with regard to online learning platforms that was offered throughout this piece of the closure. We recently received word from our local intermediate unit here in Western Pennsylvania, just related to the fact that if we would continue in a remote learning format in the fall, that funding may not be available at that point to provide, obviously provisions for an online learning platform. Has that been reconsidered at all, or is there any ongoing dialogue with that? I'm just looking at that more from the perspective of the budgetary impact that may have on our local districts. Yeah,
nope. It took me a minute, and I know exactly what you're asking. So, for context for everyone else, right now we are funding those courses that I mentioned earlier, where we have 380,000 students are currently participating. The state has provided that funding through June 30th. As of yet, we have not yet come up with a mechanism for extending that into the summer and extending it into the next school year. So Jeff, your request is well placed. We know the need is there. We've heard from many that they'd like to see us continue that. I won't put Judd on the spot, but Judd has been very helpful in this space in lining all this up. And Judd and I have lots of conversations around how we can continue that. So Jeff, know that we're trying, and our goal is to see that continue. But there's some things that we have to make sure are put into place in order for that to happen. And so I think the best I could say now is stay tuned, but we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Secretary Stem, hi, this is Jamie Bracy Green, and I wanted to follow up on Jeff's question because I think it's extremely important. When you talk about 380,000 children for the purpose, for the benefit of the folks who've joined us, I think there are over 200 people on this, would you put that in context? 380,000 children is what percentage of the total number of children under the auspices of this state board's jurisdiction?
Sure. So that would be, I'm going to do mental math here. That would be somewhere, it's in between 20 and 25. So my mental math says it'd probably be about 22, 23% of all students. We have 1.74 million students in the Commonwealth. So if my mental math is correct, 385,000 out of 1.74 million is probably somewhere in the 22 or 23% of all students range. Now, some of the other students that did not participate are in districts where they already had online learning, but I think it's safe to say that there is some subset of the remaining students that still does not have access to any online learning.
And and thank you. As a follow-on to that, I wanted to build on what my board colleague Sandra Dungy-Glenn mentioned, and this actually speaks to perhaps an opportunity. The need for professional development in terms of online pedagogies. How do you keep young people engaged? I wanted to be much more refined in my thinking about community organizations that need to support, again, up to 70% of young people who have not, we're going to have some, what we call knowledge melt, right? Cognitive melt. And I think that we're going to have to be very aggressive about what the ecosystem looks like, but the professional development for the types of pedagogies for both our teachers and our community folks would really be super, super helpful. And I'm just curious about, because of the state's, we have some extraordinary educational partners. Dr. Perry is here. I'm wondering if our colleagues over at York, if Pamela is on. But both private and public institutions have teacher professional development, instructional faculty professional development that they offer. And it may be possible, if we look at both the public and private vehicles that we have, that we may look at maybe even the PASHE schools, look at using their available resources for how we train faculty to actually cascade that down as an opportunity and use some of the CARES funding specifically for helping the higher education institutions cascade that training all the way from our undergraduate instructors all the way down to our high school, our elementary, and our, so I'm just thinking about how do we leverage so that that capacity building is there for the professional development using what we already have.
I think that this is Pamela Gunner-Smith. I think that you're right in that what we know is that it is, you can't just translate what you do face-to-face to online. There's a whole set of things that needs to be done with respect to digital pedagogy, even for training. When we've made the switch to go from face-to-face to virtual, making sure that we had the right resources available for our faculty to move in that direction, is important. And I think that there, as you said, Jamie, there are many institutions that have expertise and people who are involved in helping to train, providing professional development to make that transition would be very helpful.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that. Oh no, please go ahead.
sorry, since my name was invoked, I'll invoke the spirit of Dr. Michelini. And I think that if he were still on this earth with us, he would not only agree with the issue of equity, but he would probably point to the nature of inequity that occurs as a result of differences across demographics when it comes to online learning, and how our professional development needs to be able to address sort of through those folks who are engaged in professional development, such that they have the additional capacity for addressing that inequity.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback from all three of you. I can share that professional development for teachers, administrators, and in the home are on our roadmap moving forward. That's that's clear and where we're at now. At the same time, how that happens, we're still working through what those mechanisms are going to look like. And so the feedback here about the potential role of post-secondary partners and at both the undergraduate and graduate levels is well received. I will say, Judd, I do have to put you on the spot for a minute here. So on Zoom, this is really nice. You don't have to come up from the audience. You'll just unmute. Judd, am I correct in remembering, I think one of the stories that was shared with us several weeks ago was about graduate students at one of our universities, graduate students that were actually providing instruction and also, I think, some development. Am I right in hearing that somewhere along the line?
Yeah, no, you're right in that. And one of our key partnerships with PBS in the western part of the Commonwealth, WQED, they are working with Carnegie Mellon, and their graduate students and professors are providing technical assistance and not only like professional learning opportunities vis-a-vis online methods, but hotlines for the programming that's been developed. So they're connecting mathematics programming with robotics. So if a teacher's trying to understand, like, how do I make this algebraic connection with the robotics program that's going to be on tonight, you can call up the hotline and get, technical assistance from graduate research assistants and from some of the leading minds in robotics, in the world from CMU. So we are leveraging those post-secondary spaces to provide supports for teachers.
So this is so opportune that Judd is on. Hey, Judd, how are you?
Hi, Dr. Bracey.
Hi, it's good to hear you. Because I wanted to segue, Matt. I'm such a fan of the STEM work that's been going on in this Commonwealth. But one of the things I do want to share is that there is a very specific need when we're talking about equity and access, that the learning, focus on project-based learning. How do you transition to project-based learning so that we can make sure that we are amplifying the cognitive development? And so that's why I'm saying the PD, whether it goes to the PASHE schools, whatever we have, CMU is a perfect example. Temple has been doing something similar with our Saturday academies. York, I'm sure everyone is doing their best to provide something, but the transition to project-based learning, inquiry-based learning, lends itself to a certain pedagogy and an opportunity to drop shift equipment and supplies to families. And I think everyone listening needs to understand how massive a logistical challenge this needs to be, how this needs to be handled. I'm sure is part of what you're percolating in both rural and urban and suburban areas. How do I get my kits, my robotic kits to kids while still maintaining social distancing? I mean, we've had people drop shipping at corners and making sure that people standing on posts so families can come by and get their stuff. I mean, this is how important it is, recognizing that 70% of kids still need to be served in the Commonwealth. So I really, really want to encourage all of us to look at our higher education partners, our 2-year, our 4-year institutions, every way that we can to be a partner, again, looking at competing for CARES funding to make sure that we have the investment resources available to make this new learning possible. So I just wanted to share that the STEM piece, the project-based learning, we're going to need that logistical support. So thank you for everything that you're all doing. I think it's just amazing. Just got to do more. Just got to do more. It's never enough. Thank you.
I'd just like to add a follow-up question. In terms of when the world gets back to whatever normal is, because it probably won't ever be that same normal. But how are we going to assess and manage perhaps the deficits in learning that have actually resulted from this time that students have been virtual. Because I think we've already talked about inequities with respect to training of availability of resources. Not everyone has the access to the internet on a continuous basis, differences in learning style, differences in terms of being in a very structured school setting for part of the day versus being in a home environment, which it could be very different. And so what thought has the department given to about doing the assessment when students get back to have a sense of where they are and how we're going to manage getting them to where they need to be to move forward?
Sure, I'll give a short answer, but then certainly if we would ever want to connect offline, we can have a deeper pedagogical discussion about how we're going to do that. But you're spot on. We had mentioned learning gaps earlier. One of the areas that we have identified as an area of focus heading into next year is on formative assessments. And we're going to have to find a way, again, at a state level, we can't control local assessments. So we don't have the authority to push out, the same local, baseline benchmarking assessment in the fall. But we are going to work through our intermediate units to continue to gather data, and we're going to have to control for different kinds of assessments. And then we're going to engage some research partners. We've already been engaging American Institutes for Research, AIR, has already been working with us throughout this past number of weeks. So Judd is going to reference their report in a few minutes here on science standards, but at the same time, we've been engaging them in learning gaps, and we've already been pushing out surveys. For example, just as a quick example, in our career and technical education space, we've pushed out a survey because we're trying to measure learning loss from students who have some really unique challenges because it's very hard to do welding in distance learning, right? And it's very hard to do mechatronics in distance learning. So we're relying on some of our research partners to help us identify the depth, breadth, and scope of the issues we're facing, and then to make the most thoughtful policy and resource decisions we can on that. So long answer, the short answer is, at the department, we've directly got to do things with formative assessments next year. And second, we have to keep some research partners engaged in this space with us, so we're getting some reliable data sets.
Hi, I just want to comment on the equity and the opportunity. I think unquestionably this is the single most historical educational setback that any of us have ever known. I think particularly in high poverty areas that do not have access to technology, et cetera, we're going to see declining scores. We're going to see a whole slew of associated issues. And I just hope that during Teacher Appreciation Week that we remind ourselves that those teachers who choose to work in the inner cities and some of the most complex, underfunded settings are not the cause, but they're the solution. And when students don't have access to that kind of intellectual capital, support, and content, it creates a chasm of opportunity that is going to have, as you're working on a very strategic plan to try to address the gaps that we're creating even day by day by not having access to the quality teachers of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
And if I may, just really quickly, Meta, because I know we've had a lot of comments, just to follow up on Jim's comment. In addition to the appreciation, I really think it's going to be critical to support those teachers in a couple of ways. One, even when we get back to whatever the new normal is and in schools, the need to help teachers with differentiated instruction, because children are going to be coming back with many more, the range is going to be huge in terms of a classroom and where these children are in third grade. Third graders could be at a first grade level, they could be at a fifth grade level, all in the same classroom. How does a teacher deal with that without some additional kinds of supports, and how they use online instruction and all of that much better than they may have been able to prior to this. That's one comment. But in addition to those academic needs, children are going to come back with trauma. They've lost parents. This disease has been all around them. They've been out of socialized environments for a long time. So expecting a teacher to be able to handle that on his or her own is completely unrealistic. So thinking about the use of recovery dollars, and as the district is preparing its budget, how do you support those behavioral, mental, emotional needs in a school with adequate personnel, partnerships that can really see to the needs of the whole child and the teacher? Because that's the best way, one of the critical ways that I think we're going to need to support our educators is giving them the other supports that will allow them to do the academic work that they need to do.
Yeah, totally. To your second point, I couldn't agree more. That's why the student wellness piece is the fourth of our 4 pillars, if you will, moving forward, is around student wellness, including how to respond to trauma. And to your prior point, I would just add to differentiation. We have a team meeting at 5:30 today, and the whole conversation is going to be around how do we train teachers not only to differentiate instruction, but also to be nimble and flexible for instruction that may have, what if students are, some are distance learning for a period of time, are back in their classrooms, or distance learning. How do we ensure that that's all one seamless system? So it's typical differentiating for students that have different needs, but also differentiating to have a seamless instructional system in those environments. So all of your comments resonate. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions or comments for Matt? Okay. Matt, thank you for your report, and thank you, you and to the department for all you've done in addressing and accommodating the needs of our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is a progress report on efforts to update our academic standards in science and technology and environment and ecology. Last fall, the board directed the department to prepare a draft of updated standards for our consideration. Judd Pittman, Special Advisor to the Secretary of Education on STEM, will discuss progress on this effort today. Mr. Pittman also will present recommendations for educators to serve on content committee teams that will put pen to paper in drafting updated standards. The composition of those content committee teams is on our agenda for action later in the meeting. I'd like to remind you that the draft standards that will be produced from this effort do not represent the end of this process. Additional opportunities for input from both the board and the public will be available as the standards move through regulatory review. Mr. Pittman, I'll now turn the meeting over to you for your progress report.
Thank you, Ms. White. I really appreciate it. Karen, would you like me to share my screen? Is that okay?
Yes, that'd be great, Jeb.
Okay. So are you able to see it okay, Karen?
We are, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First, I'd just like to thank Deputy Secretary STEM for really leading the charge on continuity of education and making all of the efforts that we've had over the last several weeks, making them seamless and being not only supportive of all of us as employees of the Commonwealth, but also just really being mindful of what it's like to have youngsters at home and still balancing work and little ones. So I really appreciate his leadership during this time and all the work that everyone's been doing on the team to really support learners across the state. With regards to standards, science, technology, environment and ecology standards, I want to thank the board, the state board, for giving the department the opportunity to engage in this process and really to engage Pennsylvanians in a deep mindful and meaningful way to better understand what the needs are, what the wants are, what are the strengths and weaknesses of our current sets of standards, and really where we as a Commonwealth and as a statewide community want to go to best prepare each and every one of those 1.74 million learners for success in school, in career and beyond. So this has really been such an awesome process, and it's been something where we've collaborated with Berks County Intermediate Unit. So I want to thank the team from Berks County Intermediate Unit for all the logistical help. I want to thank our partners at the department, Dr. Brian Gasper for helping lead the work. And I'd also like to thank all of the folks that have come together and come out to the sessions to really make sure that they voice their thoughts and concerns about the current state of science, technology, environment, and ecology education, and what they really want to see for the future. So what we presented the state board with these past weeks was what we called a landscape report. So we partnered with the American Institutes for Research, with them helping us as a third party really lead the conversation across the Commonwealth. And that landscape report was broken into two pieces. The first part one, was really to take a look at the national, local, and state context going on, to look at the best practices, to look at research, to look at what other states are doing around standards. And that part one of the landscape report was what we based all of our outreach on for the stakeholder session. So part one of the landscape report, which will be accessible after the meeting, what you'll see there is just a real deep dive into assessment, into instructional pedagogy, into all of the direction that states have went over the last year since we have went on this journey to update or revise or review our science, technology, environment, and ecology standards. Part two, which was really a lot of the fun stuff, was getting to travel all across the state and talk to stakeholders. And part two of the report is what the committees are going to use to really dig into the work. So that landscape report is really a foundational document for the work in the past and how we're going to move forward into the future. So what we really started with was this stakeholder engagement process. And we began stakeholder engagement in February. In the early months of February, we took the chance of driving all across the state with weather and doing face-to-face sessions. For those 12 face-to-face sessions, we had over 1,000 plus stakeholders across the Commonwealth register. We engaged then in those sessions over 961 individuals, and they were cross-sector. We really took the playbook of all of the work that the Secretary has been leading over the last several years to engage all stakeholders, business, industry, post-secondary, students, caregivers, educators, administrators. We really took that collective impact approach when we did our outreach for stakeholder engagement. And at each of those face-to-face sessions, we also had a companion virtual session. So we had 2 additional virtual sessions to try to meet the needs of all stakeholders in the Commonwealth. When we selected the face-to-face sessions, we didn't want any individual to have more than a 2-hour drive. And if they did have an additional drive or couldn't make it, couldn't get release time, we also had those virtual sessions. And the virtual sessions were held at times when it would be after work so that folks could engage. And if they weren't able to get that release time, could do so at a different time and space. So that gave us a total of 14 sessions that we engaged stakeholders in across the state. And in those sessions, they were able to share what their hopes and concerns and dreams were for science education. They were able to, we did some vision setting. They were able to say, in 2035, what do we want newspapers and the media to say about the science standards in Pennsylvania? We looked at the crucial elements that the standards should have. We wanted to better understand what impacts standards should have on teaching and learning. We wanted to know what are the strengths and challenges of our current sets of standards. And then finally, we ended those sessions with a real deep dive into what are the knowledge, skills, and dispositions that these standards should cover to really set our learners up for success in school and career. And with that, with those sessions, when you broke them out, we were really surprised. The virtual sessions were the highest attended and quite honestly had some of the most deep and robust engagement. So when you kind of break the numbers down, we had 441 stakeholders come to the face-to-face sessions, and we had 510 stakeholders engage in the virtual sessions. Now, I will put an asterisk beside the face-to-face. As we got closer to the current conditions we're in right now, we did have to transition several of the sessions to virtual. And I want to assure you that even the Philadelphia session, which was our last session of face-to-face in March, we were able to pivot that session on the morning of. We had roughly about 70 folks registered for that session in Philadelphia. When we pivoted that morning, we had over 75 folks on the virtual session. So even in that transition that resulted as because of COVID-19, we were still able to really do some deep dive engagement. And then our partners at AIR, through all of those conversations, they were able to gather 5,600 pieces of evidence that they had to dig through and analyze and look for themes. And that's the bulk of what part 2 of the report is. Now, there is one portion of the engagement that we did that isn't captured in the landscape report. In addition to all of those stakeholder engagement sessions, we also did some surveying. So we had over 600 folks participate in our survey. The survey was aligned to our stakeholder sessions. So in our report to the board, there was an appendix to the memo that allowed you to dig a little bit deeper into the survey. But because some of the survey responses also included folks that were part of our sessions, we didn't make that part of our report. So when you look at the geography of our engagement, the stars denote where we had all of our face-to-face sessions. The purple, what looks to be purple on my screen, stars, so the one in Philadelphia, in Chester County, and in Allentown, they were the sessions that we had to pivot to virtual as a result of COVID-19. When we look at our engagement across the Commonwealth, we were able to engage every sector that we wanted to, from business and industry to post-secondary, to students, to families, to school boards. So we had really nice cross-sector representation, and we were able to engage through stakeholder engagement and survey. We were able to engage 62 of the 67 counties across the Commonwealth. Now, when we look at our stakeholder engagement, we didn't always ask for information about your county. So when we look at the county representation, there could be some folks that we engage that their place of work is different than when their county is. So there may be a sense that we were able to engage people from every one of the 67 counties in the Commonwealth. And to make sure that we did our due diligence, after we finished the stakeholder sessions and we're looking at our survey results, we saw that there was a couple, there was like 6 or 7 counties that we had yet to engage based on our data. We pushed that survey back out again and were able to garner feedback from 4 additional of our most rural counties, including Forest County, which has a district LEA that's countywide, and really try to garner that feedback. So we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence to engage all Pennsylvanians in the process. So that gives you a little sense of the geography of where we went and how we engaged in the space. Each session of whether virtual or face-to-face, ran roughly about 3.5 hours. It was a lot of robust dialogue, and we always had multiple folks at the sessions that were, taking notes and scanning, and you really did learn a lot about just about where folks stood on science education and where they wanted to go. It was a pleasure to get to re-travel the Commonwealth and get to connect with everybody. So when we look at those themes of evidence, there's 5,600 pieces of data that we looked at. We broke them down into some broad buckets that included college and career readiness, course offerings, dispositions, graduation rates, implementation supports, knowledge, what are the national and international standards. We had a focus on the Pennsylvania context, and I'm just going to pause there for a second. And one of the things that we pulled out from the Pennsylvania context, which really resonated, was folks really believe that standards should promote student civic engagement and should spark and spur investments in the local economy. So there was also a piece about making sure that we were able to use Pennsylvania's context as a learning space. So, when we're talking about, I don't know, watersheds, that we're not always talking about the Mississippi River, let's say, but we're actually using Pennsylvania context to better understand what's going on. Then we broke down further into skills, standardized assessments, the structure of the standards, and there's a couple things I'd like to share about those particular spaces. So skills, folks really talked about the importance of scientific literacy, problem solving, collaboration. And when we think about the structure of standards, what that really related to was responses that focused on the future of the Pennsylvania science, technology, and environment ecology standards. So things like they should be based on current research, or they should include information about science and technology. They should have sections that are focused on human impact and the environment, and that they're developmentally appropriate and based on research about the learning of children. And others, like other folks, just simply wrote that our standards should be research-based. So when we looked at the strengths and challenges, the theme that got the most pieces of data that we were able to code were the strength and challenges portion. And there was roughly about 1,280 responses in that space, with 416 of those responses focusing on strengths, and 817 of those responses focusing on challenges. And there was some, true to Pennsylvania, there was parts of the strengths and challenges that showed up in both places. So implementation supports, for example, was a strength and a challenge. The ability of having really high quality teachers was a strength. The standards structure that we currently have showed up as a strength and a challenge. So for example, a strength was that they're easy to follow. The challenge was that they lacked focus on skills and the processes of science. So that gives you a little bit of sense of the strengths and the challenges space. The second of those big bucket categories that garnered the most responses during those sessions was those that focused on skills, knowledge, and dispositions. And when we talk about dispositions, we're really talking about those habits of mind. So some of the things that came out of that space was a focus on curiosity. We want to make sure that all of our learners, whether you're in pre-K or you're in 12th grade, you still have curiosity and you're really excited about learning, that you're an empathetic learner, that you're able to show resilience through a project. Some of the knowledge pieces that were the highest, had the biggest themes were social impact, like what is the impact of science technology on society, and then humans and the environment. And then the third big bucket was energy and better understanding energy across the knowledge and the different context areas. And then the skills that showed up most were analyzing, interpreting data. I think in a time like we're living today, understanding science and understanding how we interpret data is ever more important. Critical thinking, and then finally problem solving. So what are the next steps with the landscape report? The landscape report is going to be a public-facing document. It's something that is going to be grounded and be a foundation for folks to use and guide science education in the Commonwealth moving forward. And ultimately, that's going to be that first ingredient that the committees are going to use to start the revision, the updating, and the dialogue around where our standards should go. So that landscape report, where our goal was, that would really be the ingredient, the foundation, and that our committees are going to be using that as they make informed decisions moving forward. So when we look at our committee selection, much like everything that we've done over the last 4 years across the department, we tried to stick to our goals of equity, innovation, and openness. And so with the committee, we wanted to make sure that as in the stakeholder sessions, they represented the depth and breadth of Pennsylvania. So our goal was really to do deep outreach and garner a wide array of diversity of applicants for the committee, for both the content committee and the steering committee. I will say, as a result of the COVID-19 conditions, we were concerned that we wouldn't get a lot of interest, and we were wrong. So, which is exciting. We had 181 applicants for the content and the steering committees. The application process was open April 7th through April 20th. We reached out to every avenue that we could, including universities, state agencies, all of the folks that left their email addresses as part of the survey and the stakeholder engagement process, superintendents, IUs. We reached out to the NAACP, the Urban League, our teachers unions, AFT and PSEA. We really tried to do our due diligence. And as we were learning about our committee, the folks that were interested in the committee, we continued to do short cycle data analysis. And I want to thank the policy team and Erin Donahue she was able to give us real-time data on where we were at with the committee. So we did a second outreach about partway through that 2-week period, just to double down and make sure we were getting the diversity of educators and stakeholders that we needed to have a well-rounded committee. When we look at the application, just the process, we had 15 reviewers that blind reviewed the 181 applicants. Each application got reviewed by 3 separate reviewers. And we looked at things like overall educational experience, understanding of existing standards and current research, equity and access in education and meeting the needs of diverse learners, and a deep understanding of curriculum and standards development. When we look at where the geography of where our committee recommendations came from, so of those 181 applicants, the folks that, the applicants that had all the applicants had 3 reviewers, but those applicants that were recommended by all 3 reviewers were the ones that were elevated as possibilities for the content in the steering committee. So we looked at the geography of the Commonwealth by the Pennsylvania Inspired Leadership Regions, or the PIL regions, and we were able to garner applicants from each one of our PIL regions across the Commonwealth. And those applicants represent the same diversity of stakeholders that we engaged in the process. So there's business and industry partners, there's IU, there's teacher leaders, there's administrators, post-secondary partners, there's folks representing our STEM ecosystems. We really do have a wonderful array of individuals from across the Commonwealth that are willing to dig in and do some extremely important work as we move forward with the standards process. And then we were able to get 60 folks that are going to be part of that, hopefully be part of that content committee, and then an additional 18 that will be part of the steering committee. The content committee is going to be the nitty-gritty of the writing and really digging in. The steering committee is going to be that higher level lens to make sure that we're going in the right direction, that we're thinking about equity and access, that we're thinking about our most vulnerable learners, that we're thinking about neurodiverse learners or students with exceptionalities, that we're thinking about rurality and urbanness and everything that makes Pennsylvania so special, that they're reflected in our standards. When we look at sort of next steps from here, AIR, or American Institutes for Research, will be generating, based on that landscape report, a series of tools and resources that the content committee and the steering committee can use to do their most important work. The steering committee and the content committees will be ready to meet June 16th through July 1. And we've already set that up so it's a virtual space so that we can do this in any condition that takes root. We also have 3 individuals that'll be both steering committee and content committee so that we have seamless dialogue across those 2 committees. And then we have, after the committee cycle is done, just to double down on our commitment to openness and equity and engagement of our stakeholders, we're going to engage in some focus group work. So any of the folks that in the committee that we feel like, we might not have quite the representation we need, we're going to develop some focus groups and really dig into that focus group space, and then bring the committees back together after July 1, just to polish up their recommendations recommendations based on what the focus groups tell us they feel is either great, missing, or we kind of need to refine before presenting it to the state board. And then we're hopeful that in September, we'll have a finalized series of recommendations for the state board to be able to review and give us feedback on regarding the science, technology, environment, and ecology standards. So that Karen concludes the update on the process. And I gladly take any questions or field any comments regarding where we're at and where we're going.
Great, Judd, and just for purposes of transparency, before we get to our action items, I'm going to share on the screen the names of the individuals that were nominated for those committees. But before I do, I believe Representative Roebuck has joined the meeting, and I just want to confirm for roll call purposes. Representative, are you with us and able to speak now?
I have been with you since the beginning. I've been muted out. So I'm now, I think, not muted.
Thank you. I'm glad we were able to figure that out. I'm glad you were able to join us.
Okay. I do have a, can I just say one thing? I had a question about the initial report that was given. I wonder if at an appropriate time, I'd like to add my comment if I could.
Certainly.
Whenever you want me to do that.
Judd, are you open to taking questions now?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, we're happy to take your question now, Representative.
Okay, my question is about the initial thing on the Basic and Secondary Education Act. And the one thing that concerns me when we do these discussions is about schools and getting schools back to normalcy as we go forward, is that schools do a lot more than just education, at least in Philadelphia, where I am. Soon, there are a lot of programs of support for families and students that are in schools that are now also cut off. And so when we talk about restoring schools to where they should be, it's not just getting educational things back in place, it's getting all those support things back in place as well. For example, I know there are schools that make sure the kids have food that they take home on Friday so they eat over the weekend. There are schools that do a lot of things with counseling and all sorts of things that are sort of social service items. So schools are not just education places. They do a lot of other social services, and we need to include that in our conversation, I think, as we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
That's my comment.
Representative Deputy Secretary Stem, just want to thank you for your comments and for reminding us of the roles that schools play, and particularly in areas where schools are offering community school models and everything from school-based mental health to clinics to parental support. It's an important reminder. So thank you, Representative.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we go into entertaining additional questions on the overview of where things stand with our effort to update our science standards, I'm going to scroll through the list of names of content committee and steering committee recommendations. These were shared with the board in advance of the meeting and will be an action item when we come to the end of our agenda. So Judd, I'm going to scroll through these and then I will switch back to allow folks to engage with any Q&A follow-up they may have with you.
And Karen, I would just say we will have the list available on our website with role, organization, and name.
Yeah, we will put that up after the meeting. Okay, I'm going to turn the screen back over to you, Judd, so that you can entertain any questions on the effort to update science standards.
Okay.
Are there any members that have questions for Judd?
I'm sorry, Karen.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any questions or comments for Judd?
So I'm just looking in the chat. I see when will the committees be announced and contacted? And when will those that apply to the content committees be informed? This is really an action of the board. So we didn't want to alert any committee members that applied, either whether they were accepted or not, until after the board had an opportunity to review and then subsequently vote on the committees.
Okay. If there are no questions or comments for Judd, thank you, Judd. Thank you for your report, and thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you, Ms. White. Really appreciate it. And anytime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Our next discussion item surrounds standards for school district organization that were developed by the State Board of Education in the late 1960s and later published as Chapter 2. For unknown reasons, Chapter 2 is not included among the State Board regulations published in Title 22 of the Pennsylvania Code. At this time, I'd like to invite our legal counsel, Tom Howell, to provide us with background on how the standards were located, their relationship to the Washington Township Independent School District matter, and other school district boundary change requests that may come before us, and the potential next steps for the board to consider on Chapter 2. So Tom, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I had a conversation with the Legislative Reference Bureau that really informs this entire process. First, a little bit of background. As the board may recall, during litigation of the Washington Township Independent School District matter before the board, the Commonwealth Court remanded that case to the board for the application of the standards that were used at the time that the school district consolidation process was ongoing in from the late 60s to the early 70s. The only reference that we were able to find to those standards was in a school district desegregation case out of Western Pennsylvania called Hoots. The Hoots case referenced the standards, and the board applied those standards as they were referenced in that case. Upon the board's ultimate decision in the Washington Township Independent School District matter, the case was again appealed to Commonwealth Court, and Washington Township raised the issue of how those standards could be relied upon, given that they did not appear in a regulatory document. After much research, none of the council involved in that matter were able to locate the actual published standards. Eventually, counsel in the Office of General Counsel, including myself, went on a somewhat detailed expedition and actually retrieved some boxes from the Legislative Reference Bureau, which is the actual legal repository for published regulations. In reviewing the boxes of archival material at the Legislative Reference Bureau, in the presence of the executive director of the Legislative Reference Bureau, we located the actual filing that demonstrates that the board did deposit properly approved standards for the consolidation of districts and for the process of independent school districts with the LRB after receiving approval from the Office of Attorney General, as was required by the Commonwealth Documents Law at that point in time. Those standards were in fact published in the very first volume of the Pennsylvania Bulletin. The law provides that publication in the bulletin of certain documents appearing in the records of administrative agencies would have certain force and effect once published in the bulletin. those were then supposed to be consolidated, actually a number of years later, into what we now know as the Pennsylvania Code. In particular, most of those records were consolidated into Title 22 of the Pennsylvania Code. However, for some reason, this particular document was never incorporated by the Legislative Reference Bureau. Because that did not happen so many decades ago, the Legislative Reference Bureau suggested that if the board wished to utilize these standards as promulgated in the Pennsylvania Code, it should request a corrective amendment under the Commonwealth Documents Law that would allow the LRB to publish these and provide the appropriate notice.
Tom, isn't that shifting the burden to the Board of Education when in fact the burden should be with the Legislative Research Bureau to simply move forward and incorporate Chapter 2 into 22?
Actually, Title 45 places the burden on the agency to request the corrective amendment. So if the code doesn't reflect an accurate recitation of the regulations, the agency is to request that corrective amendment.
So even if another agency fails to meet their burden?
Yes, I mean, that's practically how it works. The Legislative Reference Bureau doesn't necessarily have a burden. The law says that they shall publish, and if the agency sees a discrepancy, the agency shall request a corrective amendment.
So what's the penalty for having failed to publish?
On whom? I'm sorry.
The Legislative Reference Bureau.
Like most of us, there is no penalty. They are an agency. They're actually a legislative agency, which is a bit different from a typical executive agency. But ultimately, agencies acting in good faith are generally immune from repercussions for those actions taken in conjunction with and in a manner consistent with their authority. Here, back in 1970, it simply didn't get published, and no one appears to have noticed until the Washington Township matter was addressed by Commonwealth Court in a way that required reference to these standards.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom, this is Maureen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, congratulations on finding this. You must have felt like you were Sherlock Holmes.
Someone actually referred to me as Indiana Jones, and
well,
I'll take either
that
of those.
too.
Thank you.
But we'll stay with Sherlock Holmes because you solved the mystery. And, I do give you a lot of credit for just going the extra 9 yards here to get to that. My question is this. So how does that position us with Commonwealth Court? I know that we were looking at this. Well, they were concerned about some of the procedural issues and the notice issue. So how does that, you've petitioned or you've submitted a response to the Commonwealth Court, as I recall reading, right? Wasn't it some type of a, whether it was a motion or something? And I don't know what the status of that is and what that means for the bigger picture.
So unfortunately, we didn't find this publication until after the matter had been argued. I noted the court was very concerned about publication of these standards during argument, which was not something that any of the parties actually briefed in much detail. So it was only after that line of questioning that we engaged in really, historical research to find this material. Because we did find it after argument, we had to request permission from the court to submit the information. We did so. The court directed briefing on that. We submitted our brief. Washington Township does continue to object to the submission of what they call the post-argument submission. and the court has not yet issued a determination.
Okay. Do you feel that this is one of those things with Commonwealth Court that will likely be granted? It seems to me that it was probably the brief that I read then, it seemed like there was a lot of good faith done in this whole, the whole process of responding to the Commonwealth Court's request.
I don't know the answer to that. And really, if we're going to talk strategy, we probably ought to do that in executive session.
Oh, no, I was just not at all. But that's
sure, no, and I understand that. I just want to caution everyone with respect to privilege and things like that. But I don't know. It's very difficult to say. I think this probably caught just about everyone by surprise. I think many of us, myself included, thought this was just lost to history. So I don't have any feel for how the court would look upon it at this point.
Thank you.
And thank you, Maureen. I just want to note for our record-keeping purposes that Maureen Lawley-Green, in addition to Representative Roebuck, has now joined the meeting, and we should make sure that they are recorded on our attendance list for today.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments for Tom? Okay. Our final discussion item pertains to the outstanding matter of the Erie County Community College Plan. We postponed the hearing scheduled for March 18th in Erie in light of concerns related to COVID-19 and large gatherings. Since that time, social distancing guidelines and stay-at-home orders issued in response to the pandemic have created conditions under which it's not possible for us to gather in person at this time to conduct a hearing. Back in November, when the board determined to undertake a hearing as the next step in this matter, we adopted a motion stating that a hearing would be held as soon as possible, but no later than 6 months. That self-imposed 6 months time frame takes us to May 14th, which falls next week. Today, we need to make a decision about how to amend that time frame. So I'd like to invite our counsel, Tom Howell, to provide input on the options available to the board. Tom?
Thank you. Sorry, I had to restart my video and audio. That's a rather open-ended inquiry, but I will say that one of the things that the board should consider is timing. In particular, the motion adopted by the board will be expiring shortly, and given the state of affairs, I don't think it's at all clear that a hearing will be able to be held within the confines of that previous motion. So the board may wish to address that. In so doing, a number of options do remain open. The board can proceed with a virtual hearing. The board can reconvene at a later date to hear the arguments to be presented. Lastly, the board could revisit the idea of assigning a presiding officer to either create a record and proposed report, or to simply create the record, that is, accept testimony, accept exhibits, and pass that information along to the full board for consideration.
Okay.
My question,
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to kick it off. My question to the solicitor, obviously the timeline is critically important. It's the COVID-19 is highlighting, as Deputy Secretary pointed out, the equity and opportunity gap in groups is growing every month. And I think the reality is that Erie clearly sees an even greater need for a community college now than it ever has in its history. As people are losing their jobs, not temporarily, but permanently, need new job skills training. We need to figure out how we can help the Erie community pivot quickly by getting up what I think is the centerpiece, one of the centerpieces of the Economic Recovery Act for Erie, and that's the community college. Concurrently, students in the city, many of them are losing, I think, hope that they can afford to go to college or that's even possible to go to college. So all of this is in the context of almost I guess the knowledge would be a sinkhole that is growing monthly. So my question to the solicitor is, which option would clearly and most effectively and quickly allow us to get to the point where we could have an immediate, or whatever that term means, vote on Erie's community college?
Unfortunately, I don't think I'm in a position to tell you that. That's something that the board has to decide operationally. Legally, all of those manners of addressing the petition and application are perfectly acceptable. They all have certain aspects that could lead to additional delay or could lead to a more expeditious resolution. Unfortunately, we would not know in hindsight which one would have been the most efficient until the process has concluded. For example, we could appoint a presiding officer, and that presiding officer could start collecting the record and be inundated with requests for, in essence, objections and motions to the board that could slow the process down. The hearing officer could also be delayed in providing that record evidence to the entire board. Similarly, the board could try to address the matter virtually, and the preparedness of the parties or technological limitations may inhibit the ability to address the matter quickly in addressing it in that manner. So, you know, each option has pluses and minuses, and I can't tell you that there is one that, legally speaking, is most effective or efficient.
Yeah.
Dr. Barker.
Yes.
Dr. Barker, is your question of Mr. Howell the question of whether we can move to vote and come to a decision in this meeting? In other words, whether the authority.
I would say that would be ideal, but I personally would be ready to vote at this meeting and move it forward. But if that's not the will of the board, I think we need an option that accelerates the chance to vote Erie what it desperately needs, which is a community college, so that this sinkhole on the precipice of poverty doesn't continue to grow in Northwest Pennsylvania, Erie County.
So, Mr. Howell, I think for the benefit of the board, can you answer the question of whether Mr. Barker can make that motion today? Or anyone?
Any motion can be made. My recommendation is that would expose the board to risk of reversal. You know, agencies, clients are always permitted to act against advice, understanding the risks associated with doing so, as long as they're not contemplating a criminal act, and that's clearly not the case here. So yeah, the board could vote. I think regardless of which way that vote were to go, given the significant interest and frankly significant litigation that has occurred thus far, I think if that's the way that the board decides to resolve this matter, it should be prepared for additional litigation to address that vote.
Well, what would be the best way to solicitor to reduce the potential litigation? Would it be to assign a hearing officer?
May I ask?
Would it be? Yeah, go ahead.
A follow-up question, and that is, could this meeting not be conducted virtually? What would be the drawback for that? I guess my concern is that we've had things already presented, people who are supposed to speak. If we do it without having that available, then, you know, there are two sides, and each one will perhaps feel that they have not had an opportunity to state their case. I would be very concerned about what that would mean for the board. But is there a reason that it could not be held virtually?
No, that was one of the options that I did mention, and that's certainly possible. You know, as I said, that has drawbacks. It's also got advantages. It could be done quickly. It would allow the board to address the matter much as it is addressing the matters that come before it today. However, issues of the ability and preparedness of the parties and participants to access the technology needed could be problematic. That said, that is again an operational issue that the board should contemplate. That is not strictly speaking a legal matter. But I don't believe there's anything that would prohibit the board from holding a hearing virtually.
Well, let me ask our staff, Karen, do we have the capability of conducting a hearing like that virtually?
We would need to formulate a partnership just as we're doing for this meeting. The Zoom technology that we're actually using right now is not part of the Department of Education, but we have found another educational partner that is lending us the ability to host a webinar. So we would need to reach out and find a partner that would be able to make that accessible to us.
Can I make a comment, please? Can you hear me, Karen, or Karen White, or Karen Molchano?
We can hear you.
Who is this?
Lee Williams.
Lee.
One of the things I'd like to think about when we think about virtual, which is such a great way when we're distant from each other to communicate, is how long we had scheduled that hearing for. Hours, 8 hours, almost 6 hours, and to be online for 6 hours and keep your attention and make sure that you can have people get the proper respect that they deserve for their hearing. And then there's cross-examination. There's cross-examination not just by the board, but by the other members of the people who are presenting. The logistics of that and making sure that we have transparency and that we give people equal opportunity is really difficult. And I'm just going to say, I'm at home. I don't have the capability to be on the internet for 8 hours. Those of you who have offices or have this at your house, great. I don't have it. I don't think I could adequately participate. And I feel that's just not fair to the folks who are putting so much on both sides into this.
Hi, this is Jamie Bracy Green, and I'm listening very carefully. And I think I just wanted to note that apparently Representative Roebuck is trying to speak, but from my own perspective, and I'm following up on what Jim was just sharing, this is something that if we have an opportunity to move the needle, we should take the opportunity. The delay, the risk to us that Mr. Howell is talking about, the risk of reversal has no meaning to me in the context of moving the process at least another level forward for both sides who have put so much time and energy into this. It just feels like it's a never-ending quagmire of why we can't do something. And I think that as a body, we have an opportunity to do something. Even if it faces reversal, we should at least take a motion to move forward in some way, shape, or form, whether it's public hearings. And Lee, I agree with you. It's very, very difficult to commit that kind of time and energy, but these folks have committed 2 to 3 years on both sides. I think we can sacrifice 4 to 5 hours in an abbreviated public hearing to respect their time as much as we want to respect the difficulty of the logistics.
Karen, can you hear me? It's Nicole.
We can hear you.
I have a question. As of Monday, we're allowed to have 25 people in a gathering again. We are, correct?
Depends on where.
It depends on where.
Yeah. I believe if you're referring to the action that was taken by the governor, that was applicable to certain counties in the state, but not statewide as of May 8th.
Okay, I think Erie was in the yellow area. I mean, I know Center County is, so we are. I just wondered how many people would have to be present in the room. You would have, obviously, the board. You would have the one person presenting, and then the other side who would do cross-examination. I mean, how many, I know the public has to be able to, you know, we have to be transparent, but could we physically hold the hearing with the people who were going to speak, which there aren't that many of them, and then make that public on Zoom, Facebook, whatever. There's so many avenues to be able to make something public so that the public can watch. Again, there weren't going to be that many speaking on either side anyway. So it's just a thought if we're allowed to open up to 25 people here in the near future.
I just want to follow up on the comments.
I don't know that I can. Oh, go ahead, Sandra.
No, I just want to follow up on the comments that have been made, starting with Nicole's comment. I would still have concerns about the public health ramifications of that, of any in-person meeting still, even with the number of board members and social distancing. I don't know if they were ready to confront that, but I do believe, and even with understanding Lee's concerns, there may be a way to think about a virtual hearing, even if it's not held all in one day, but we're scheduled over a couple of days in the near future to move this along. I too, and I really shared Dr. Barker's concerns. You know, personally, I'm ready to vote about it today. I think this is an issue that has great merit to it. I think it makes great sense even before this pandemic for the region. But if that's not the will of the board, and if that's not the advice of our council, I would be in favor of scheduling a virtual hearing, dividing it up over 2 days. We laid out a format that pretty much limited the parties that we would be hearing from, if I remember correctly. And I think there would be a way to do that. I think that it's, in all fairness to the people of Erie County, that we really do need to move this expeditiously. And so that's what I would like to see us do.
I think that we need to think about the complexities involved in either a virtual hearing or a hybrid hearing like Nicole suggests. Those complexities are going to be technical. They're going to create potential impediments. They have the possibility, well, I think maybe something more than just a mere possibility of creating inequities. So it seems to me, unless there's further discussion that convinces me otherwise, that probably the hearing officer is the way to go, barring a decision to go against counsel's advice, which it seems like at least some number of us might be okay living with. And, you know, if there's opportunity for reversal, then so be it. And the board makes its decision, and then it's litigated after that. It's probably going to be litigated no matter what. So, you know, I think either the hearing officer or the vote sounds like it's fair.
Well, hi, it's Nicole again. Again, this board has only heard one side of this argument, and we voted to go to a hearing. We have to have some form of a hearing. It's going to be a nightmare if we don't. And I know everybody thinks they think how this should go, but until they hear the other side of this story and hear it from those who have factual information, I don't think we can vote on this without everybody hearing it. We've already agreed to a hearing. If we're going to use a hearing officer, that's fine. But the other side has to present their facts, and they've been unable to do so thus far.
Well, the hearing officer, would seem to allow for the parties making their presentations, and then from what Mr. Howell shared with us, whatever that information is, that would then be presented to us in a more succinct form that we could then digest without all of the dynamics and complexities of a large group, either in a hybrid or online format.
This is Jim again. I think whatever is the most expeditious way a hearing officer would be fine? Or can we actually have a resolution that says the state should look at what is the most expeditious way, a hearing officer or a virtual hearing? And when they come back with the facts within a week, 2 weeks, whatever is realistic, with dates that we can begin to have either a virtual hearing or have a hearing officer so that we can continue progress towards getting this resolved.
Well, when you say the state, Jim, I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, who?
Isn't it our decision? It's really
Basically, the state is Karen, and to see if the resources are even available within the state to do a virtual hearing. We're partnering now with multiple entities so that we could have a virtual state board meeting. So either the hearing officer or a virtual, and have Karen come back with, after some research, and tell us what would appear to be the most expeditious way to move this agenda to a final vote as quickly as possible. And
Well, but would that delay, then we'd have to wait for Karen to come back to us, so then would we not be dealing with this until the July meeting?
Well, I don't, if there's going to be a hearing, I think we could hold a special meeting that would give people the opportunity on both sides of the aisle to comment and contribute their arguments, pro and con. And I think with the reality, it's May, that we should schedule that in early June, either a hearing officer or a virtual hearing, and then hopefully have our final vote on Erie in July at the latest, absolute latest. That gives us 2 months, 2.5 months.
Now, this is
I don't
Representative.
mean to put you, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering if somebody could explain to me about the hearing officer. You know, what does that mean procedurally? If we went that route, what does that mean procedurally? You know, who appoints that hearing officer? You know, is there, any time period in place in doing this? If anybody could answer that question for me.
Or if you don't mind, I'd be glad to address those. The board would appoint a hearing officer. There are a number of options. The board could designate a particular person, or the board could utilize the process made available through the Department of State, which has a revolving pool of hearing officers that are both contracted or direct employees of the Commonwealth. There are 2 ways to proceed with a hearing officer. The first one would allow the hearing officer to essentially run the hearing and recommend a result and put together a proposed report containing findings and conclusions. The board would then review that and pass upon it, make any changes that it wanted to. That is likely a more lengthy process than the other option, which is a hearing officer could be appointed, and that hearing officer's job would essentially be to receive evidence. Everything comes in. Within the confines of brevity and relevancy to keep the record at least relatively compact. The hearing officer would simply collect the evidence, and its ultimate weight and credibility would be assessed by the board. The board would be charged with reviewing the transcripts and the documentary evidence that is put into record by the parties before the hearing officer, but the hearing officer in that instance would make no recommendation. There would be no proposed report. It would simply be putting together the record.
Thank you.
And as
that would appear to be the way to go to gather the information the quickest. It seems to me that would be quicker and easier than trying to figure out how to hold a virtual meeting and still be able to get the information that we all desire.
I should let you know as well that it's my understanding that the Department of State hearing officers are, where requested by the parties, and engaging in virtual, at least procedural conferences, if not full-fledged hearings. My understanding is that right now they're doing pre-hearing conferences and, in essence, mediation. I do not know if they have started virtual hearings at this point.
Do they gather that information written or in person normally, which would require their information gathering to be done virtual?
Normally, the hearings themselves are done in person. The procedural lead up to the hearing is often already done telephonically. So my understanding is that work is continuing. I don't know if they are virtually conducting the actual presentation of evidence, except perhaps through stipulations and agreed upon results.
So under normal circumstances, a hearing officer would receive the testimony live in front of them. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Under normal circumstances.
That's correct.
So under abnormal circumstances, what is the process? And this may be apropos of nothing, but the United States Supreme Court is now holding virtual proceedings, correct?
They are, and as a matter of fact, I have an argument before Pennsylvania's Commonwealth Court next week that will be fully virtual. The big difference is in neither of those proceedings do you have sworn testimony of witnesses, nor do you have documentary submissions. So it's a lot easier to conduct what are simply legal arguments virtually than it is to try to arrange for the swearing in of witnesses, cross-examination, having witnesses review documents, things of that nature. That does become much more complicated.
Plus, you don't have 22 judges.
Yes. So, and what I'm hearing is that I agree with Representative that it sounds like the best way to go would be with a hearing officer. And I'd be happy to propose that we vote on that and have a timeline to have the hearing officer get back to the board with the information and then let the board make the decision. Does that seem agreeable?
Jim, that's
yeah. I hold on a second. Let's slow down here for 1 second. I don't think that's necessarily a sentiment of this board. I think there needs to be a hearing. I think it could be done virtually. I agree with Nicole. I think it could be done in a combination of a hybrid, maybe some in person and some virtually or some telephonic. But let's not forget that when this hearing was scheduled however many months ago, the strict requirements that were put in place to ensure that everybody had their due process. And so everybody had to be in person and be present. A virtual hearing needs to happen. I think the opportunity for cross-examination, vigorous cross-examination at that, needs to occur. And I think it can. And I think we have the capability.
Well,
but Jim, I'm not done. Just as a caveat to that too, to try to, this agenda says information discussion on the hearing for Erie, to try and backdoor a vote to push this forward is a complete lack of transparency that I cannot get behind. Thank you.
Senator, if I may, the proceeding before a hearing officer would in fact be a hearing. Just to clarify, it would be a full-fledged hearing with cross-examination permitted, evidence accepted from all parties. I understood Mr. Barker to be suggesting that a hearing officer be appointed to collect that evidence. Forgive me if I'm wrong or misunderstanding that, but
no, I understand that, but you're having one person arbitrarily, not having, if there are people that are for, that people that are against are going to have the opportunity to elicit their own questions. I understand.
But this body will still have the opportunity to examine and review that information. So, Jim, your notion of a hearing officer seems fair. And I think that the question that remains open, if you were to propose that at the time of voting, would be the question of whether that officer will make the recommendation or not, which is to say, just leaving it to this body to review the information collected by the hearing officer or having the hearing officer make their recommendation. So I think, Jim, what you've said is very fair.
Question, this is Jim Roba. If you have a hearing officer, what is the process? I think part of what led to the initial thing to have a hearing was the sense that everyone ought to have an opportunity to express their point of view on this issue. What does a hearing officer do to that process? Is it still possible for everyone who wants to say something or not?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't quite get the full question.
I said, if you have a hearing officer, the premise of the hearing that we were proposing to have was that there'd be an opportunity for everyone to offer a point of view on this issue. And it seems to me if you're somehow restricting that opportunity, then it's not right. It's not what will put this issue to some degree of credibility and rest. Because if everyone has an opportunity to say what they want to say, then you can't say, oh, well, it was structured in a way that our view didn't get heard. I think you've got to keep it as open as you can. I know it might be longer than we might want, but on an issue as important and as contentious as this is, you ought to offer the opportunity for everyone who wants to speak or say something about it to say it. That's democracy.
So a hearing officer is in essence the judge. The only difference is that the judge there wouldn't actually issue the final decision. The hearing officer sits in place of the board in its entirety. It's a procedural means to address a situation where you've got a board with a great number of members. For example, all of the professional boards at the Bureau of Professional Occupational Affairs, Department of State, use hearing officers so that they can receive evidence that is then presented to the board when it meets on regular occasions. It's not a process that limits what parties to an adjudication may do. Rather, it is a process that allows parties to an adjudication to present that information to an individual, the hearing officer, who then collects it and provides it to the board so that they can review it and pass upon it at an agreeable time.
Yeah, I'm going to be very clear. I want to hear every voice. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that we don't want to hear the pros, the cons. I want to hear the other side. We want to hear all sides before we make an informed decision. But concurrently, I don't want the board to be seen as stonewalling and delaying. And I'm just looking for what are viable options that can get this back on track, because COVID-19 again has highlighted the discrepancy of a community, Erie, which has not had a community college and have been paying in essence for 20 some years for other community colleges. Why not find a way to show and demonstrate to Northwest Pennsylvania, Erie County, that we are serious and we're trying to bring this to resolution? And whether it's through a hearing officer, which could hear every voice on every side, or virtual, whichever way this board would like to go, I'm all for it. But concurrently, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to continue to delay, since the Department of Ed has approved. It looks like everything's in place, and it looks like it's the board that is putting up a brick wall that, because of COVID-19, we can't get over. I'm just looking for a way to get over the wall so that we can hear both sides, make a decision, and give Erie County a much needed community college, or at least a decision one way or the other.
I just want to have my memory refreshed. If I remember right, the reason we did not move forward on this, either up or down at the last in-person meeting, was because there were board members who wanted to receive questions, information, had some questions, and wanted to get additional information. So it really was not necessarily receiving additional public comment. It was to allow board members to have questions answered, specific questions, I assume, to either side or all sides of this. That was one thing. After that, we then had a conversation convening, I don't remember exactly when, in which the board delineated what the format was going to be for that public hearing. They decided which parties were going to be relevant on both sides, who would submit testimony and so forth. So again, it wasn't a public hearing where everybody or anybody could show up and make comment. At least that was my understanding. Am I correct on those two things that I just?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
we had format, and it was really board driven in terms of having board members and giving board members an opportunity to have their questions answered. So saying that, I would be concerned about a hearing officer, because that does not allow board members to have their questions answered. My concern would be for the hearing officer to go through it, receive comment, bring it back to the board, and it still doesn't answer the questions that board members may have. So the idea of an opportunity for board members to have their questions answered so that they would feel comfortable voting this either up or down seems to be the format that we are seeking. And given where we are, I don't know how we avoid then having some type of virtual hearing to allow that to happen.
Could we have the hearing officer collect the evidence and then proceed from there to some type of either in-person meeting, depending on what's happening at the time, or proceed with a virtual meeting where the board members would have the opportunity to question those that did present that testimony? You know, we've heard that we could be sitting on the computer for up to 8 hours just receiving testimony. It seems to me to be much easier to allow the hearing officer to receive that testimony, which would give the board members, you know, a little bit of time to be able to review it, prepare their questions, and then be ready for a virtual meeting to have those questions answered.
That is an interesting question. I don't know off the top of my head if the general rules provide for that process, but it does seem to be consistent with what the spirit of those rules is. I should also note for you that the general rules of administrative practice and procedure also contemplate an agency appointing one or more of its members to act as presiding officers. So, you know, another situation of a subcommittee acting as a presiding officer is also an option.
And to remind everyone, you know, it was the recommendation of the subcommittee that a public hearing be held when it was presented to the full board.
This is Jim Agris. You know, I don't know how much time all this will take, but is it conceivable we might give it a priority and have a meeting for, it's only 60 days away, our next scheduled meeting, give it a priority and give them what they're entitled to? Our next meeting is June the 8th, you know, 60 days from now. Hopefully by then we'll be in session and, you know, the pandemic will permit us to get all back and have meetings again. So I throw that out because by the time we do virtual and we do this, and I'm just wondering whether the 60-day clock might be quicker.
This is Jamie. Hi, Jim. I actually wanted to respond to that. I think you and Kurt have some interesting perspective on this that bears some further consideration in terms of the impact of the COVID-19 and who it's impacting and how fast these decisions have to be made. The Federal CARES Act has allocated certain amounts of money for education. And if we were to say that in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that we have a community of people who have positioned themselves to be able to apply for those funds to stand up, now is the time for them to do that. And I think that's why we need to make a decision on getting our questions answered. I agree with Sandra. There was a vehicle that we put in place to get our questions answered, those of us who still have questions. But I do want to make sure that we don't put out a 60-day, knowing how fast this pandemic is still moving, the disproportionate impact on communities that were already vulnerable, and that they are sitting on top of an opportunity to apply for the funds to attack this issue, both current pandemic and post-pandemic right now, and us putting an additional 60 days on there will impact their ability to apply for those funds to support the communities here in Pennsylvania. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight that this thing isn't over and it's not going to return to normal when the pandemic is over. There are people who need to know what their life skills are going to be. And if the decision is that the CARES Act, the Federal CARES Act 1 and 2 have education money available, then our state has every right and our citizens have every right to be able to compete for those funds now, not 60 days from now when the other states will take those funds. That's just a perspective I wanted to bring.
A quick question. This is Jim Burke. I think when Sonny, Representative Sonny was speaking, I think if we could look at, and is it feasible to have a meeting in June that would be a hybrid, that would allow people either by phone or in person, depending on how the curve looks, so that we can hear both sides of the story and then take that vote or take that information and try to solve this issue one way or another in June. Is it possible to have a virtual or phone with some people in the room? Maybe each side presents their case to the board, which could be on a virtual mode, so the board could ask questions of the presenters, and that way we could have an evidentiary hearing that way, so that the board members could have their questions answered, both sides could present, and we may not be able to have it in Erie. We may need to have it in Harrisburg. I don't know, but I'm just trying to look at a way that we can expedite this one way or another, so that we can bring to Erie a decision, and hopefully it would be the right decision. Part of their Economic Recovery Act is a community college. Thank you.
Personally, I think that the hearing officer's process is probably going to give us the quickest decision. How long does that, Karen Molchenow, how long does it typically take from the time that you first make the appointment of a hearing officer? And I think that we should probably pick a random one so that it's not tripped up in political incentive scenarios. How long does that take?
John, I'd like Tom to provide some guidance on that. We've only been involved in the utilization of a hearing officer once in the past with the Washington Township matter. That took a few months from start to finish, and the hearing officer was assigned to us from within a pool at the Department of State. We did not pick that individual as the board. We made application to the Department of State to use someone who was available through that process.
Yeah.
Tom, is there any additional background?
If everyone remembers, in the Washington State case, we went with one of the other options that Tom has offered to us, which is we had a select panel that was appointed by the board to review that matter. And then it was appealed so many times that we gave it to a hearing officer who ultimately came to the same set of conclusions. And I think that matter is still in the process of being litigated. So, Tom.
I don't know the answer to that, particularly under these circumstances. Getting a hearing officer from the Department of State really shouldn't take that long if things are operating smoothly. You know, it's a matter of the chief hearing officer looking at the schedule and simply assigning it to someone based on workload. That said, under the current environment, I don't know what kind of time frame they're looking at. I can certainly find that out and report back to the board.
Tom, do they allow for the agency, which is to say us as a board, to be a little bit prescriptive to try to ensure that it's a more timely process? In other words, if we say we would like the officer to be appointed within, 10 days or something, and then we expect them to conduct the affairs that are required within 20 or 30 after that, and trying to get things wrapped up so that by the time we're actually at our next meeting, we are able to review things presented by the hearing officer and maybe with your counsel, and then come to our conclusions.
Yes, you can prescribe certain expectations. That doesn't, however, mean that they're going to be able to find a hearing officer who's able to adhere to those. So, you know, we can ask for many things. Practically, I don't know. And it may be that they are equipped. It may be that they're not equipped. I just don't know what their schedule or workload is at this point in time.
How do we ensure that the use of a hearing officer addresses the questions that board members have? Or is the hearing officer given a list of questions to ask and they guide the discussion? Because my concern is we're adding this, what I would see as a potentially extra layer, and still not getting the information that board members were seeking.
The board could certainly do that, to present those questions to the hearing officer and the parties, of course. And in essence, what you would be doing is not so much guiding the hearing officer, you'd be asking the parties to, in their presentations, address the following issues as described by the board. That's perfectly acceptable. You know, there's really no, other than relevancy and competency of evidence, that there aren't too many limitations on doing that. If the board could do it, the hearing officer could do it, is really what it comes down to, except for making the final decision.
Tom, is there anything that in that scenario where board members would offer questions in advance, would that mean that board members would in some way be allowed to filibuster by delivering a telephone book of questions?
That would be up to the board at large as to how that process were to work. If the board, my suggestion is that the board is, in essence, the agency head. No single member of the board is the agency head. As such, the questions that are submitted to the hearing officer would be by wholesale operation of the board, not by individual members.
Tom, this is Maureen. Is it possible, and I'm going back to the hybrid situation where there's a hearing officer managing the day, and in accordance with the subcommittee's recommendations on how to manage that day, because it was a pretty structured schedule with both sides having equal time and a certain time frame for questioning. Can we consider also that option of maybe also having the board watch it? Let someone manage the, just like Karen would do, or someone designated by the board to kind of be the traffic cop, but allow us to be part of it in a Zoom kind of thing, and at the time in the pre-established schedule that we were supposed to follow, that would be when we would have our questions, or perhaps even have a set of questions that may have been developed earlier. But I've just been listening a lot to the need to have people's voices heard. I think there's also an appreciation one gleans by listening to the witnesses visually, seeing them. It might be virtual. I'm in red, I'm not in yellow where I am. And but I just think that we have to be creative here to address as many issues as we can about the need for both notice and opportunity to be heard. And it, you know, but we already have a schedule that I thought was pretty well thought out. So just a lot of little comments there, but just wonder, could this all kind of come together?
I think that puts the hearing officer in a really difficult position. In essence, you've now got 3 layers of review. That's something that the general rules don't really anticipate. If that's what you were interested in doing as a board, I would suggest dispensing with the hearing officer and simply having those individuals selected by the board run the hearing, because at a certain point, the parties are going to be, knowingly or not, ignoring the hearing officer or not giving credence to the hearing officer and instead playing to the board members who are there. Those board members would not have been vested with the full authority of the board because they haven't been delegated to run the hearing either. And everything's going to have to come back to the full board, which I think really unduly complicates it. If you're looking to have the board have oversight over the hearing process itself, I would simply delegate the authority over procedural issues that arise during the hearing to that subcommittee and letting that subcommittee operate as a presiding officer. Again, the general rules clearly contemplate that. That's something that's very clear in the law as being permissible. This hybrid of having a subcommittee oversee the hearing officer in the hearing, it's not really contemplated in GRAP, and I can see practical problems with that.
So just bottom line into what you just said is that we already have a defined process, as Sandra had said, and a couple people have commented on, and we already have an expectation by both sides as to how to structure their presentations and the questioning of the witnesses. And I think and Jonathan would know the details better. My mind just can't remember. I think the total time frame, Jonathan, was maybe 6 hours to that. Was that true or not? I cannot remember.
I'm sorry, I don't remember it off the top of my head either, but one of the...
It was 6 hours.
It was 6
We
hours.
had designated 10 to noon, a lunch break from noon to 1, and then 1 to 4 with time for member questions following.
Yeah, yeah. So...
Okay,
And those member questions were also confined to a limited time frame. I forget what it was, a few questions or a few minutes. Do you remember what that was, Karen?
It was 3 minutes per member with the ability to delegate your time to another member if you did not have questions of your own.
Can we then move this to, it sounds like we need to have both sides. Can we just set a date to have a virtual hearing and a vote on that date? Is that possible?
Well, that's functionally what we had previously decided, but just not in virtual form.
Yeah, and it
Right.
seems to me consistent with what our process has been to date. We're not like changing horses in the middle of the journey. And
Right.
the Zoom, I've been on a Zoom meeting, frankly, that had 250 people. So there is a way to make that happen. Someone has to manage the Zoom, of course, and that will take some processing and procedures that will be, we will be educated about. But perhaps we just return to what we've done in terms of already structuring this and look to setting a hearing date that's a virtual hearing, get the approval of both sides too. And I suspect they would, both sides would be willing to do this, but I certainly would make outreach to either side so that we have consensus on this, because it is a different way of doing a hearing, of course, but we're in different circumstances.
I don't think we should be asking the parties for permission to make the decisions that we need to make on our own. But
No.
I would say
It's
agree.
more to give them prior notice on what we're doing here.
you need to think
Yeah,
about,
so
you're going to follow
I'm
this
willing,
that we have already been following, then in a virtual format, which is fine with me, the only additional recommendation that I would suggest is that we bifurcate it into 2 days so that we're not sitting in front of a computer for 6+ hours.
That's fine.
Great.
That's a fine suggestion. I just think there's a consistency and a predictability and to this whole thing, and yet letting the people there know that we're very concerned about this.
Yeah.
Karen Malachala, do you think this is possible? Could you put a resolution, I will propose it, that we have a virtual hearing over 2 days, not to exceed 6 hours, and work with the same crew that you worked with before and develop the structure? Is that possible?
We can try to structure a virtual hearing over Zoom. What I don't know if I can guarantee is dates that we be selected at this time. We could perhaps establish a general time frame for staff to talk with our partners about when that technology would be available to us, and then I can survey the board on availability of members so that we ensure we have the quorum that would be necessary to conduct those proceedings. But I don't know offhand when the technology would be available to us.
But we could do it in June. Could we do a resolution said time to be determined based on availability of the technology, et cetera, members? You know, try to get that going. You know, and Sandra, others suggested it. I'm willing to put a resolution in, whatever it is, to get this off the dime.
Yes, and Tom, I would ask if there's any other technological considerations you think that we would need to include in a resolution to move forward with a virtual hearing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
and Jim, that, as was said by others, it would address all the issues.
I lost Jim's audio.
Yeah, Jim, if you're speaking, it looks like your video has frozen up on our end.
Well, in any event, just a point to share that Jim had mentioned sort of in part of his comments, punting it back to the committee that really has already come. If we're going to go down this road, that committee had already come to its conclusion and the board already adopted that. And we're not doing anything different except going virtual. Yeah. So that,
and doing it over 2 days, right?
Yeah, in 2 days, right.
So that set of decisions continues to stand as far as I'm concerned. And the only modifications would be A, virtual, and B, 2 days.
Well, okay, and then I have a question. So would we be ready to vote after those 2 days, or would we have to wait till the July meeting to vote?
It was originally contemplated that the vote would occur immediately at the conclusion of the hearing.
Okay.
So yes. In this case, if it were bifurcated, it would still be immediately concluded at the end of the hearing.
So we would have to make sure that we would have a quorum.
Yeah, on both days.
On both days.
Yeah, wow. But both to accept testimony and to conduct a vote, yes.
Yeah, it's 2 days, but it's one hearing. You know, I'm using the word bifurcate. It's really just splitting it over two. You're not changing anything procedurally. You're just splitting it over 2 days.
And again, Karen, could people be present if they're in the county that's yellow, that's allowed to go, to eliminate some that would be on the virtual? It might just make doing the Zoom portion of things a little more expeditious if some of us were physically in the room. Because, you know, again, we're back to still, how are we going to make this transparent to the public? If we can eliminate those of us who don't mind being present, you know, if they don't want to be Zoom in, and if you can be present, again, I just don't know if that would alleviate some of the technological stuff.
I'm not
sure.
I'm not sure it would or wouldn't. I don't see an issue with if we're going to have this virtual. I think that's our decision, and then where any given board member wants to sit while it's virtual is up to them. If they want to sit, you know, in the Catskills or the Alleghenies, wherever they want to sit, that's fine with them. That's fine with us because they're still virtual.
Right, and in terms of organizing that in a physical location on site without knowing when restrictions will be lifted in different parts of the Commonwealth, at this point, all members of state board staff still reside in counties that are subject to stay-at-home orders. So I don't know whether or not I'll be in a position where I'd be able to go and physically sit for a hearing. I just can't predict what that time frame might be.
And I think as a board that we shouldn't be asking our staff to do that.
No.
Is it possible that was suggested that those who do not have access to Zoom, like in Erie County, Erie City, they could establish a site where they could follow the social distancing rules and allow individuals to have access or make comment through a site in Erie so that every voice could be heard. So it would not just be those with digital.
Jim, I think providing access is a different conversation than allowing folks to make comment, because the structure of the hearing was evidentiary and did not include a public comment component.
Okay, gotcha. All right, gotcha. Okay.
Also, people can call in to a Zoom. I think one of our members today is.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
We have a phone option as well for individuals who do not have access to Zoom, and we have quite a few participants in this meeting who are on only telephonically.
Yeah, we just want to make sure people have access, as was said earlier. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
So Karen and both Karens, what should we do at this point? Would Karen like Monticelli to think of the resolution? I will propose it.
Yeah, yeah. And so when we move to action items,
Okay. All right.
you'll make the motion. Okay. So then we can move on. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment. If there are any members of the public participating via webinar that would like to address the State Board of Education, please indicate by selecting the raise your hand icon on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Staff will unmute you one at a time, and your comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. So now, if there are any members of the public participating via, so are we ready to do that?
Karen White, this is Stephanie Jones, and
Yeah.
I am going to now, I see that people have their hands raised, so
Okay.
I will allow the people to talk in the order that I see them on my screen.
Okay.
And I will have a timer of 3 minutes, and I will then notify you when they're finished, and then I'll allow the next person to talk.
You'll notify me.
I will just let you know that their time is up, and then you can, yes, okay?
Okay.
So I'm going to allow the first person, Larry Owen Sr., to talk. Go ahead, Larry. Larry, can you identify yourself, please? I have unmuted Larry Owens Sr. Larry, if you can hear me, it's your turn, but I will come back to you. I will mute you again and come back to you. The next person I have is Kim Clear. Kim Clear?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay.
Can.
You can't see me, I'm sorry, I'm starting my timer. Good afternoon, my name is Kim Clear, and I would like to begin by thanking the board for taking the time to address such an important matter in bringing education to Erie County. I come to you as a recently elected official. In 2019, I was elected to the Erie County Council. And one of the reasons that I was elected was because of my fervent and passionate support of bringing a community college and educational opportunities to Erie County. Now, where does this passion for education stem from? Well, I currently am a proud public school teacher in one of the largest districts in Erie County, in Mill Creek Township School District. Yes, many of you and I are actually colleagues. I have the amazing opportunity to teach English to 11th and 12th graders, preparing them for the rest of their lives and inspiring them to access the greatest within themselves to realize their full potential. Could there be a better job in the world? Absolutely not. But gone are the days of a 4-year education which equaled a sustainable living wage. With exponentially rising tuitions, the cost no longer equals the reward. And because of varying learning styles, the majority of my students and students across the country require hands-on training, real-world employment skills and certification opportunities for success. I witness this in my classroom daily, or now via Zoom. However, I can't tell you how much sadness and heartache I feel when I have to tell my students that affordable hands-on training and skills are not available in Erie County. Yes, they will have to leave Erie County to get the affordable training. to better their own life. We are literally telling our residents they have to leave to get affordable training, and then we expect them to come back. Right now, our students and residents have two options: a 4-year school or a for-profit certification that both end in crippling debt. And let me note that not one of our for-profit entities offers post-secondary Department of Education accredited credits. Therefore, they are non-transferable, and these people cannot further their education. Erie County remains the 4th largest county in Pennsylvania, and it just so happens to house the poorest children in the Commonwealth. You see, what makes us unique is that our poverty is actually both urban and rural. And what does research say is the key to ending poverty? Well, my friends and colleagues, my fellow educators, it is education. Affordable training and education that meets the needs of the individual learner. Education is the key to ending poverty. So I am asking you to help Erie end poverty. I am pleading with you on behalf of my students and their futures, pleading on behalf of my community. Give our residents a chance. We cannot afford to not have a community college. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate it. I'm going
you.
to the next person. We'll go back to Larry Owens. Hi, Larry, are you available? Okay. The next person I have is Meg Riley. Meg?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Can.
My name is Meg Riley, and I am a school counselor in the Mechanicsburg Area School District. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak publicly today. Specifically, I want to thank the State Board of Education and PDE for your leadership and guidance during this school closure. And as we begin to prepare for the new school year and wondering what it might look like. The main reason for my speaking today is I wanted to share with you publicly that I would like to acknowledge Dr. Judy Bookhammer. She is currently the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania School Counselors Association. Dr. Bookhammer has dedicated her life's work to the students of Pennsylvania as a classroom teacher, school counselor administrator, and she is currently the Executive Director of PSCA. Throughout her career, Dr. Bookhammer has worked tirelessly with stakeholders to meet the academic, social, emotional, and career development needs of our students throughout the Commonwealth in the belief that all students should have access to a school counselor and a comprehensive school counseling program. This June, Dr. Bookhammer will be stepping down as the Executive Director of PSCA. And so I want to publicly acknowledge her for her vision, her passion, and her leadership in her advocacy of school counselors and advancing the role of school counselors throughout Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will move on to the next person here.
If I may, while we're moving on, this is Matt. I just wanted to also
Yes.
just echo those remarks. I think Dr. Bookhammer, I know that Dr. Bookhammer has been a great leader in the field since I arrived 5 years ago in the department. She's been an advocate for students. She's been a support for the field, and she's been a partner of the department in trying to create the conditions for all kids to be successful. So I just want to echo those remarks and I appreciate being able to do that. Thank you.
The next person I have unmuted is Freda Tepfer. Freda, are you available to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. I was part of the group of, my name's Freda Tepfer. I have a master's in adult education, and I owe my academic success to the time that I participated. I'm an alumnus of Nassau Community College in New York and several different community colleges in Washington State. I was part of the delegation that went to Harrisburg in October or November, whenever it was. We were so disappointed that the committee did not recommended a hearing. We did not understand what additional information could possibly be needed after all of the exhaustive information. However, if you are going to go with a virtual hearing in over 2 days, I just encourage you to move forward. This has been going on a long time. Erie has adequate population to support a community college. It has adequate wealth. It has the gaming funds. It has other funds available. And we're the only large city in the state lacking a community college. We've been supporting a community college for colleges around the state for years, and there's certainly unmet need. The unmet need, and I've worked with adults and with school children with special needs and with students who are blind and visually impaired. And even myself, I had an undiagnosed disability. Some of us need the extra help of in-person education. Some of us need the extra help of a more personalized system than what's available in a large university. We need in Erie a hope for the future so people can move forward. They can get the training they need to qualify to go on to a 4-year school or to a technical program. Any existing program that exists, the NPRC is not a community college. I know community colleges very well. I've attended them, I've taught in them, I've volunteered in them. So I just urge you to move forward. It's time to get this done and decided, and please don't delay any longer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Frida. The next person that I will unmute is Carl Anderson. Go ahead, Carl. I'm sorry, I'm not
Can you?
allowed. Yeah, can you hear me? Yes.
Hear
Yeah,
you now. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I want to say thank you to the board chair. I have the utmost respect for you and the rest of the members of the board
Thank you.
for the work that you're doing. I'm Carl Anderson, a member of Erie County Council and a member of the Erie County Community College Committee, which is the joint and collaborative or a group that was put together by resolution of County Council last year to continue to push forward and finalize our application and bring it to a vote with you, made up of the administration, the county executive and her officers, county council, and our community partners, both in the philanthropic community and in the nonprofit sector, moving this application so vitally important to our community, moving it forward. I must say before I go on any farther that last night at our county council meeting, we honored Eva Tucker Jr., a longtime educator in Erie County. Dr. Barker will remember him well, a 32-year member of the Erie School Board, a man who fought for community college and the education of those who were underserved and underprivileged, and a gentleman who fought for what was best and what can be the best in the Erie community. So we continue to honor him. I must say, as I mentioned that, and I look over Dr. Barker's right shoulder, I can't help but see the word dream up there. And there's so many people in the Erie community that are looking to us to help them dream their way out of poverty and dream their way to a better tomorrow. And we all know that the way to do that is through education. We in the Erie community are prepared to step forward and make this dream a reality. The philanthropic community, the government, Erie County is prepared to step forward to financially support, and to make sure that this community college is successful and is a first-rate endeavor for both retraining under workforce development to get the students who need that hands-on training and that individual preparedness, and for those that need the remedial work to get them to the next step. We are prepared to do what it will take to make this community college a success. And we are also prepared to work
Hi,
with
Mr.
the
Anderson,
Board
I'm
of
sorry, your time
Education.
has expired.
Thank you so much for hearing us today. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Before we move on, this is Jim Barker. I just want to say that I had the pleasure of working with Eva Tucker almost my entire career. There was no greater leader. He did things in the community that could not have been done without him. He always sacrificed himself, his time, his work, and is truly a role model and hero for everyone that knew Eva Tucker. And I extend my sympathies to the family. He was a great man. Thank you.
I have now unmuted Gary Lee.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you, Gary.
Great. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the State Board of Education. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your efforts and your support to our educators, to our students across the Commonwealth, and particularly here in Erie County. My name is Gary Lee. I'm the Director of Administration for the County of Erie. The county executive was planning to have comments. Unfortunately, she had to proceed to a press conference. And she and I have been working on this along with the Community College Committee for the last 3 years. And this has been a very, very important initiative to us. As you know, this has been a very challenging and surreal time for all of us. Here in Erie County, as we prepare to move to the yellow phase on Friday, we are on the front lines on the fight against COVID-19. As Director of Administration, we are involved in the daily efforts along with our Department of our Department of Health, as well as our community partners. I truly understand the whole of the challenges that COVID-19 has brought upon all of us here in Pennsylvania and around the world. The landscape has changed significantly. We have thousands unemployed, hundreds of small businesses not knowing whether they're going to be able to open in the next weeks and the months to come. The need for community college education will be even more urgent in the years ahead as we recover from this pandemic. Although our preference would have been a face-to-face meeting, here at Erie County, we are definitely open to the virtual hearing that would be conducted in a manner that would be safe and appropriate for all. So we're just asking the board to move this issue forward, to allow our application hopefully to receive a positive and favorable vote for the men and women and for the children to come. Everyone's speculating right now, but one thing that we cannot speculate on is education and the need to have it. So we are grateful that the committee appears to be moving forward with this. We look forward to the virtual hearing. We look forward to a community college in Erie County. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person on my list, unfortunately, does not have a name, so I'm going to unmute you. Could you please state your name?
Hi there, my name is Sydney Zimmerman. I am from Erie County. I currently am a Canvas lead for Erie County United. I am in support of the community college. First and foremost, thank you for your work on this project. Thank you for sticking with it. It has been a long 3 years that Erie has been fighting for this, so I appreciate y'all sticking with it. In regard to the community college, there have been some very poignant points made. One in particular that I heard that y'all could have missed was that in Erie, you have the opportunity to go to for-profit colleges or to get a for-profit certification. Unfortunately, we don't have a education institute that is not for-profit, and we have seen what for-profit can do to the cost of education, making it so high that it is financially prohibitive to people, which is a real issue in our community where people already struggle financially. There was also a point made about people having to move out of town to get a more affordable education. And not only, would you have to go get the education and come back unsettled, but you have to save to be able to move to go do those things. So again, just thinking about how can we create a sustainable system within our community that provides education for people, because so often we are told that the reason that people in our community do not get hired for jobs is because they lack the proper education and skill requirements to fill the job requirements. And in Erie, if you're familiar with the opportunity zones and the amount of development that has been happening here in Erie, it's a real shame that more of like the trades workers or even perhaps like the accountants working on those projects can't be from Erie, because again, we don't have the skills necessary. There are so many times that we see construction trucks or electrical trucks working on phone poles, and you'll notice that the if it's not Penelec, that the trucks are from, Ohio or different parts of Pennsylvania or even New York. And again, this goes back to us not having education that is affordable here so that people can get trained here. And not just higher learning college education, but for the trades as well, which this community college plans to address as well. Currently, we have places like Great Lakes Institute that can provide certain certifications. We have smaller learning venues. I know that there is a couple who puts on like trades learning classes at Central Tech or Erie High in the evening, but they can't possibly scale up to the magnitude that we need. And I just would like to go over the numbers before I'm sure my time is going to run out. But
I'm sorry, but your time is expired now, Sydney. Your time has expired.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
I hope that everything gets worked out.
The next person I have unmuted is Bob Casillo.
Good afternoon. It's Bob Casillo, but I've been called a lot
sorry.
in my life, so that's not a problem. I am Bob Casillo, and I'm here to urge your immediate support of the Erie County Community College. For over 30 years, I've been a strong advocate of quality, affordable public education. Notable accomplishments include collaboration with Dr. Jim Barker in establishing the North Pennsylvania, the shining star in Pennsylvania public education. From 2007 to through 2019, I served as a school director in the city of Erie and served as board president for 2 successive terms. During my tenure, I initiated the pre-K for PA movement, officially adopted a formal 5-year strategic plan treating the needs of students while elevating the level of education throughout the entire district. It became the first school district to officially endorse the Erie County Community College. In 2017, I served on the curriculum committee for Empower Erie and was elected to the Empower Erie's board in 2018. As school director, I witnessed over 11,000 students graduate. In 2015, I conducted an unofficial survey of seniors to see how many were furthering their education. And I was disturbed to learn that the vast majority had no plans. And when asked why, overwhelmingly, they cited the cost, a cost that is insurmountable and a roadblock to families and children raised in poverty. Please consider that we in Erie County rank among the lowest in per capita income in the Commonwealth. I speak firsthand as to the needs of the city of Erie, and discussing our dilemma with other school directors in Erie County, the same conditions exist in communities such as Corey, Union City, Wattsburg, and others in the region. The Erie County Community College will fill a void in continuing education. I firmly believe that the proposed community college will not only provide a pathway to succeed, but will bring a renewed source of pride in the community that is so much in need to reinvent itself. So in closing, I guess that the Erie County Community College represents much more than an affordable quality education. It represents hope. Hope for young men and women in Erie County, and hope for a community that has been left behind for so long. And with that, I bid you farewell and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casella. It's always good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well, my friend.
The next on the list, the person does not have a name, so I'm unmuting you, and you're listed as 553615730. Could you please state your name?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Terrific. My name is Jim Kutz, K-U-T-Z, and as some of you may know, I am the attorney of record for the applicant here, which would be the Erie County Council, and of course, its executive director. Mr. Gary Lee has already spoken on behalf of my client. I simply wanted to raise one small point, in as much as the horse is not yet fully in the barn. And it dealt with the very decent and diverse discussion relating to how this hearing would go forward. I will not talk merits. I don't think that's appropriate, but I do want to talk procedure. I absolutely implore the members of this board to agree to a process that is a virtual hearing where you will be able to hear and see witnesses. It is a far better process. Living in Harrisburg, I spent a lot of time in the administrative agency arena where we utilize hearing officers. And I've always kind of felt that if someone charged with the DUI got the right to appear before 12 jurors, if someone who had a slip and fall got to appear before 12 jurors, not a hearing officer, the County of Erie deserves the attention of all you. You are the decision maker. And I just hope that in a few minutes from now, there will be a majority vote to hold the hearing at the earliest possible date. We seek a date certain so that we can have our witnesses present at our day in court. I want to thank the board for giving me this time, and best to all of you, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
You bet.
The next person on our list to speak is Charles Mock.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hear you.
Thank you. I joined the chorus of voices that have commended you for the way you have operated in your decision-making today. I think that you serve as a template for how a lot of boards should operate, giving respect to each other's opinions and also giving respect to justice and fairness. I represent and empower Erie as the chair of the Interfaith Committee. It is a committee composed of Christians, Muslims, Jews, and also non-institutional faith communities. And I want to simply weigh in from a personal perspective. Being a native of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I'm grateful for the Harrisburg Community College. which started my path toward a desire to actually further my education. And through that community college, I had an opportunity through a community college community relationship to actually be a mentor, a teen mentor, actually, for the White Hill, or the, well, we call it the White Hill Correctional Institution. It's the Camp Hill Correctional Institution. And I was able to also be a part of programs of a recreational nature that allowed me to develop skills in basketball. And I only say that because what was raised earlier was, this is not just simply an education issue. This is also a community empowerment issue. It involves collaboration and partnership with other entities in the community that help toward family empowerment. And as a preacher of the gospel, we represent a constituency of a lot of poor people and also seniors who have to retool in order to be a part of educational advancement that meets their own needs at late stages of life. And so I would hope that we would continue to place this decision in a larger context of its humanitarian nature, its social nature, its moral and ethical nature with respect to taxes paid, and also health and education issues in terms of the growing disparities revealed by COVID-19 among people of color. I've heard about availability, affordability, and accessibility on this call. I've heard the reports by the Deputy Secretary, and I would just hope and pray that we would not allow politics to hijack a vote that is so necessary for people's present and future, especially in light of COVID-19. Four-year colleges will be further away from the reach of certain poor and middle-class persons who we need in our community. And community
Mr. Mock, I apologize. Your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next on the list does not have a name. It says A. Horton. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, I'm Andre Horton, Chairman of Erie County Council. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can hear you.
Great. I'd like to thank all the other speakers who spoke before me, but most of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Education for allowing and providing this opportunity for myself and other Erie Countyans to be heard. I came here on this meeting, on this Zoom call, with the expressed intention of asking for a virtual evidentiary hearing, but I'm pleased that the way that things have transpired during the course of this meeting, my colleagues and so many other callers have already expressed many of the things that I perhaps would have expressed. But I do want to make a few observations and a few comments. Since everyone's talking about COVID-19, we know that COVID-19 has illuminated a lot of things. It's illuminated the lack of equity, the lack of technology, and all too often, the lack of compassion about it. We've been fighting for this thing for 20 years. I was on the Erie County Community College Committee under the past county executive. We fought for it in 2006, and we finally got the political will to do it here in 2017. And to be sitting here 3 years later, while the numbers are worse, is very, very disheartening, heartbreaking, really, because we sought this college to combat the wealth gap and the achievement gap and the brain drain that pervades our community as our children go outside of our community to look for other opportunities and affordable quality education. We've withstood it all. But here, COVID-19, we deserve to have in our quiver all the tools that every other community in the Commonwealth has that will be needed as we start our recovery in this economic process. Erie County, the 16501 zip code in Erie County is the poorest zip code in the entire country. And every Pennsylvanian, regardless of where you live in the Commonwealth, should be embarrassed by that. Last I looked, number 47 out of 50 states of job creation. I'm embarrassed by that. The 3 years ago, USA Today 24 Wall Street article cited, used Erie County numbers in reference to the city of Erie proper, but it voted Erie County, the city of Erie is the worst place in America for African Americans. I think we moved up from 1 to 9 to number 9 or number 10.
I apologize, Mr. Horton. Your time has expired.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person that I have unmuted is Jason Brendel.
Hello, and I just want to say
I'm sorry, Jason, it's hard to hear you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Thank you so much for Deputy Secretary and the Board of Directors. Dr. Barker, this is one of your prize products of East High School, the $22 million new high school that you were a part of. I was a graduating class in 1999. So I'm still here fighting for the city, and fighting for the county, and fighting for the citizens of Erie.
Thank you.
I'm going to tell you my story. I'm a self-taught chef. I am a culinary artist. The only culinary artist school in Erie County was Mercyhurst Northeast. And it cost an arm and a leg to go there. I didn't have the educational opportunities like a community college would help for my craft. And Erie being a tourism magnet, we have a lot of fresh, new culinary artists that are ready to take on the world, that live in Erie, part of the food and hospitality industry. Where are they going to go for that schooling? I did get accepted to the International Culinary Arts School in Pittsburgh. I chose not to go because I wanted to get an education here in my hometown. I went to Penn State Barron for political science, pre-law communication, and I'm finishing up my degree in that area. But a community college would help me achieve my dream of opening up a restaurant in downtown Erie. And also I do a lot of advocacy for the LGBT community. And there is a need in our community for community college. Affordable education for everyone. And I wish that we can just get the decision today, this year, in this moment. You have the hands of our future in your hands. I wish and I would love to go to the Erie Community College for Culinary Arts and earn my degree, open up my business in downtown, and tell each one of you, because I got the education and the opportunity to allow my American dream to come true. I got the education at a community college in Erie. And you guys can come to my restaurant. I'll serve you, whatever you would like, what's on the menu. But let me tell you, there's a lot of hungry individuals and citizens that would love to go to a community college in Erie. We, the people of Erie, deserve a community college. And like what Dr. Barker said at my graduation, the sky's the limit. Erie's limit is limitless right now.
Thank you, Mr. Brendel. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
The next person on the list is David Jeffery.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
I want to thank all the members of the board for their service to the Pennsylvania students, particularly during this difficult time. I've not read every article or attended all the meetings, but there appears to be a debate between Northern Pennsylvania Regional College versus a community college in Erie. And I think that's the wrong debate. The Community College Research Center at Columbia University states that over 60% of students at community colleges need additional assistance, whether it's in mathematics, whether it's in reading, whether it's in social skills, whether it's in just housing or food. Northern Pennsylvania Regional College is great for students who are prepared to watch a professor on a college screen and absorb that material. That's only 30% of potential students. The other percentage need a lot of hand-holding and a lot of help. As I've been watching what teachers are trying to do with COVID-19, for temporary solutions, they basically put the instructor in one room and the students separated in other rooms. That's Northern Pennsylvania Regional College's approach for a college education. That does not work for at-risk students. And Erie, I suspect, will find that its community college students are more than 60% of them need assistance. And I'm really confused by why even the long-term debate about those students at risk in the Erie community who need a community college to meet their needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, 1 second. The next person on my list is Randy Barnes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. What a thing we're dealing with. Who would ever thought January 1st the board would be dealing with something like this on the landscape? And for any of us to know what's going to happen in the next 6 months or year, it's just so undecided. But I just want to talk a little bit about my experience with the NPRC, and that would be the Northern Pennsylvania Regional College. I've been following it for a couple of years. I was really excited when I heard about it because I thought at the time it was 10 years ahead of all the other community colleges in Pennsylvania. Well, right now, I think it's probably only got a 5-year head start because it's not much different than what you and I are doing right today. Now, there are student success specialists, and I've been a big advocate for the past year. I've been saying, please, county council, elected politicians, take advantage of the NPRC. It's here now. Well, the NPRC has literally trained hundreds of people in workforce training. They do both. They do the education like you and I are doing right now, talking to each other, communicating, but that's education. But they can do that in Corey. They can do that in Wattsburg. I think that we are doing a disservice to the public by not promoting the NPRC, and that our county council and our elected officials have kind of strayed away. We should not be ignoring the NPRC. And my advice, and I've said this for over a year at county council, city council, anyone listen? Make the NPRC say no. You tell the NPRC what you need, make them say no. Because the NPRC is there to serve the community. They've reached out to all different segments of the community. They will design things for our community. If we need extra help in math, if we aren't doing it in high school, and let me just say, I agree with Dr. Barker about the sinkhole. At the bottom of that sinkhole is kindergarten and first grade. We've got to straighten out our primary grades. We've got to have these kids, when they graduate from high school, they've got to read at an 8th or 9th grade level. They've got to have math skills when they graduate for 12th grade. We know that we've had to put $14 million additional into our public education system in Erie. We are wasting our legislative dollars by ignoring the NPRC. I'm disgusted that we are wasting those dollars. And this, you know what's nice about the NPRC? Everybody in the state is paying for it. There's no, and let me just say, using gaming revenue money to pay for our college education, that's not a good way to plan. The casino's been closed for we don't know what the gaming revenues money is going to do. And we've taken $50 million of gaming revenue money in the past 10 years and given it out in the community. Our metrics stink. Every metric we have, I've heard these people say every metric we have stinks. So let's fix our grade school, let's fix our high school, and let's promote the NPRC. I'm sorry to get excited. I've been in business for 46 years. I've done business.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barnes, your time has expired.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Stand up and stretch just once, you'll feel better.
Once again, I have unmuted Larry Owens. Larry, are you available? Okay. Next person on the list is, I'm sorry, it's very long. This person does not have a name. It's EJ, I think maybe.
Hi, yes. I am from Erie, the city of Erie.
Could you please state your name?
Yes, my name is EJ Fike. I'm from the city of Erie.
Okay.
All right. Thank you everyone for doing this. I know this is crazy to have to sit on these conferences all day long, so really thank you for it. I just wanted to kind of share my personal story about how community college here in Erie could have positively affected my life. I'm 37 years old. When I first finished high school, I went to college like a lot of people are told they're supposed to do, and I just was not prepared and ready. It caused me to drop out, my freshman year with a significant amount of debt, but also with a significant amount of money that I needed to pay back before I could enroll in school. I attended Edinburgh University, which is one of the local universities here, and it took me about 10 years until I turned 30 where I was able to save up the $3,000 it cost me to pay before I could register for classes again. Luckily, I was able to re-enroll in Edinburgh, earn an internship that I did with Empower Erie, actually. And I was able to sit at the table in all of their meetings that they held over the course of the 2 years they did their program, and basically just be a bystander listening to all of this with really no skin in the game to begin with, but then listening to all the business leaders say how they have a lack of skilled trained workers, listening to all of the teachers, counselors, and even local colleges say how a lack of community college is hurting our area, and how community college will actually bolster their graduation rates, because now we'll start offering them or providing them with accredited transfers and people that are actually making progress. It's hard to ignore what we have going on. Essentially, I think what this came down to is a political maneuver by the NPRC and the people who are the founders or sponsors of them. And it's obvious that there's a need here in Erie. The NPRC has been active now for 3-4 years. If you look at their records in terms of their financials, in terms of their progress, in terms of their results, it's obvious they do not fit the need that this community has. They have no diversity on their board. They have no representation in terms of inner city or even really minority representation. So I just very urge the board to take all these into account when we hear why NPRC should be here. NPRC has had a chance to prove themselves over the last couple of years, and I think they've shown that they're not capable of bringing this to scale the way they need. So I just urge you to vote yes, move this along. The people deserve it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. The next person I have unmuted is Lanier Alum.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
We can.
I'm the Executive Director of Susquehanna Valley Community Education Project. My doctorate is in the Management of Community College Policy and Administration from the University of Maryland, University College. I wanted to just point out that you are the first board in 27 years that is vetting an application to the state for a new community college in the Commonwealth. And I just want to tell you that as I've observed your working through this, the courage that it takes to do something like this it has to be appreciated. And I want you to know, I certainly do appreciate it, because I've studied community colleges that have been established in the past 10 years across the United States. And there is no other state that has to go through what Pennsylvania has to go through to get a community college established. So thank you. I wanted to point out that during 2008 to 2010, during and following the Great Recession, the community college enrollments surged, and they surged because people needed reskilling and retooling. And we know that after COVID, we are definitely going to have to generate a new workforce, and that the community colleges will be critical in that process. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that before COVID, we had $1.5 trillion indebtedness specifically for college debt. Post-COVID, we can anticipate there will be enormous default on loans, and students who are going to be financially in the most difficult situations. And it's, again, the affordable community college that becomes a wherewithal to move students up and out into more socioeconomic stability. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person on the list is Amanda Burlingham.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Again, my name is Amanda Burlingham. I am from the city of Erie, and Madam Chair and the board, I want to thank you for the hard work that you do, and most certainly for being on such a long meeting today. I'm sure you have family and other things that you'd like to be doing, so we certainly appreciate you being here. I just wanted to just address a couple of things. First of all, to tell you what a community college has meant to me. I am very much pro-community college. I grew up in Butler, Pennsylvania, 100 miles, just under 100 miles from here. I moved to Erie about 20 years ago when my husband and I got engaged. But before that, I was part of a community with a thriving community college. I attended Butler County Community College when I was between my first and second year of college. I had come home from my first semester of college and announced to my parents that I was not going back. I put on a hostess uniform for Eaton Park and promptly got myself a job. I would still be at Eaton Park if it wasn't for my parents who knew better and sent me to BC3 in order to continue my college education. And thank God for that, because I now own a small business and work here in Erie, where my husband and I are raising a family that consists of 4 kids. And now I'm going to tell you what community college would mean to those 4 kids, who all 4 attend Erie's public schools. Mr. Barker, Dr. Barker, you would be proud of that fact. We've got 4 kids in 3 of Erie's public schools. 2 of those kids were adopted when they were 12 and 13 years old. 2 of those girls are now collegiate students. We work day and night to catch those girls up. They absolutely could not have done what they have done without round-the-clock hard work in order to be able to get caught up on their schooling. It was not a kindergarten or a first grade issue. It is an issue that we take very seriously in order to get them caught up on their schooling. And those girls deserve a community college, because to walk into a school, those girls need to stay local for their college. And to walk into a Gannon or a Mercyhurst or a Penn State out of the gate with the lack of education that they had walking into our home at 12 and 13 years old is a a disservice to them at the very least. Now, let me tell you what it means to the families I serve. I have an organization called Erie City Moms. We work to love, connect, and empower moms who work in Erie or who live in the city of Erie. We have about
Sorry, Ms. Burlingham, you have reached your time limit.
That's too bad. We are part of the community schools. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Gary Horton is now on the list. Hi, Gary. Hi, Gary. Okay. And the last person I have available is Scott Rastetter.
Yeah, that's me.
Hi.
Thank you very much. Thank you, panelists and attendees. I've been studying up on this community college subject for quite a while now. Actually, I went to a community college almost 50 years ago. It wasn't in this state. They didn't have them back then. But there is quite a difference between virtual and the hands-on education. And the pandemic has really shown this. I hear all kinds of reports about, you know, how kids are having a hard time getting used to this online learning. And the big difference is that young people need that community and the camaraderie that they get in a school, bricks and mortar school setting, you know. And by the way, I am on the Erie County Council. I'm the elder on the council. And I've been in business for 47 years. And it's hard to find any help at all, really. I was an employer, but I can't get employees anymore. So anyhow, I am a pro community college, and you guys know the pros and cons of this battle for education. And the decision really just comes down to the positive or the negative future of Erie County. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Stephanie, does that conclude our webinar?
Yes.
No, that concludes just the online.
Right.
The web.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So now, if there are any members of the public participating via teleconference only that would like to address the State Board of Education, we will unmute the line at this time and ask for the names of each person who wishes to speak. Staff will record a list of those who want to speak, and then we'll call on you individually to provide comment. Your comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person.
And Karen, they are unmuted, so we will now entertain a list of names of individuals participating only via telephone.
If you would like to speak, please state your name.
Kumba.
I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Yes.
And your name, please?
Kumba Fire.
Okay. Is there anyone else on the line that would like to speak? Anyone else that's joining by phone only? Okay, so you have the floor.
Before I get started, can I please give a little self-introduction? My name is Kumba Fire. I'm from Liberia. I'm 17 years old.
Kumba, I'm sorry, I apologize for interrupting you. Could you please spell your name for me so I have it correctly?
Yes. Kumba is the first name. Last name Fire, Faya.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, like I was saying, I'm from Liberia. I'm 17 years old. I am a junior, about to be a senior at Erie High. And the reason why community college is important to me is because I come from a land where, like, we didn't really have the opportunity to even go to school or to even get a good education at all. Especially females, especially, like, people would be like, they don't even belong in school. They're supposed to be housewives, not somebody who's, supposed to get an education. But, I come to America, and I guess I got to go to school, but I think college is more important because college is like the real deal. Because college, is where when you go there, you can basically work anywhere, and like job hiring managers will look at your record and be like, oh yeah, this person went to this and this place, so they will be able to to work here. But not everybody can afford it. Like, especially my mom, she has 10 kids, and 10 kids is really hard to take care of. And she don't have the type of money to send all of us to school. And so if there's a community college, of course I will go for it. All my family members will go up for it because college is really important to us. We need college in this community, a free college for all of us to go to so we can become just as successful as a lot of people in this world. That will be all.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Karen Molchano and Karen White, I believe that
Yes.
is the last of the public comment.
Okay, well, thank you all for your comments. And so we'll now turn to action items. First, I'd like to call up the recommended Science Standards Content Committee teams. And I'd like to recognize Dr. Williams for a motion to approve the composition of the committees.
Thank you. I move that the State Board of Education approve members to serve on the Science Standards Content Committees and Steering Committee as recommended by the Department of Education, and that the names of the committee members be published on our website.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Agris, second.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Okay, next I'd like to call up the school district organization standards. Is there a motion on chapter 2?
Yes, I'll make the motion, John Perry. I move that the board request that the Legislative Reference Bureau publish a corrective amendment pursuant to 45 PACS Section 901 to ensure that the standards for the school district organization, which were deposited within or with the Legislative Reference Bureau on August 17th, 1970, and then published in the Pennsylvania Bulletin, be published in the appropriate title of the Pennsylvania Code.
Okay, is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay, motion carries. Next, I'd like to call up the matter of next steps for a hearing on the Erie County Community College Plan. Is there a motion on this matter?
Yes. Jim Barker. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I move that the hearing on the matter of the Erie Community College Plan, which had been scheduled for March 18th, 2020, be rescheduled to occur over the course of 2 days in June 2020 through a virtual online format such as Zoom or WebEx, and that all existing procedural orders of the board relating to such hearing remain in effect.
John Perry, second.
Any discussion on the motion?
Karen, this is Lee Williams. Is there a problem, and maybe Karen Molchano can help us with this, that we've said June, and what if we can't get the folks to find us a place to do that? Do we need to say June, but we will accept the first possible time, just so we don't have to vote again? I'm not saying that we should put it off. I'm just saying I don't want to put us in a bad situation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's at the discretion of the board. I'm fairly confident that giving ourselves an entire month to look at options will allow us to get the access that we need.
Okay, thank you,
Well,
Karen.
but you know what? You never know, because we never would have thought we'd be in the situation we're in right now. So is there something we could say that would give us a little more time in case there was a delay or there's something happened?
This is
Why don't we just accept Lee's comment as a friendly amendment unless Jim objects?
No objection.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries. Okay. At this time, we'll turn to recognizing the service of 3 members whose time with us has come to a close. First, I'd like to call up a resolution honoring Kirk Hallett, and I'd like to ask Dr. Barker to read the resolution for the record.
It's with sadness that I read this resolution regarding Kurt Hallett. He was an outstanding board member, and we will be missed. Mr. Kurt Hallett served as a member of the State Board of Education from his appointment to the board by Governor Ed Rendell in October 2010 through his resignation in January 2020. And during his tenure, Mr. Hallett served with distinction as a member of the Council of Basic Education, as chair of the Special Education Committee on Private School Accreditation, and a member on other committees focused on career and technical education and petitions to amend school district boundaries. And Mr. Hallett took on additional leadership role as the liaison for the board's student leadership program. And Mr. Hallett was a recognized voice of integrity whose voracious accounts kept the needs of the most vulnerable students at the center of state policy making. And in both his professional life and his service to the board, Mr. Hallett displayed a commitment to ensuring educational opportunity for all of Pennsylvania's children. Now therefore be it that the members of the State Board of Education express their appreciation and pay tribute to Mr. Hallett for his friendship, his frankness, and his focus on the heart of matters. And we wish him continued success in his future endeavors. Given under the hand of Karen Farmer White, Chair. We will miss you, Kurt. Thank you for your years of service.
Okay.
Quality guy.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution honoring Mr. Hallett?
I'll second the motion.
No, a second. I'm sorry, a second. Yes. Any discussion? All those in favor, oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to add very quickly that, you know, Kirk was really somebody who was very willing to openly share his emotions and what he felt in his heart about what was righteous and just for the students of Pennsylvania. We definitely will miss his membership of the board, and we need to think about emulating the kind of spirit that he brought to the table. Thank you.
Okay.
And Karen, I'd just like to add, I'm really going to miss him. This is Lee.
Yeah, I think we're all going to miss Kirk. We all do miss Kirk. Yes. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the resolution carries. Next, I'd like to call up a resolution honoring Aaron Pratt, and I'd like to ask Dr. Perry to read the resolution for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The resolution honoring Erin Pratt will be for her membership as a State Board of Education student member from 2018 to 2020. And it reads, whereas on May 22nd, 2008, the Pennsylvania State Board of Education amended its bylaws to provide for student membership and greater student voice in education policymaking. And whereas this policy ensures dedicated representation for the nearly 974,000 undergraduate students attending more than 380 public and private institutions of higher education in the Commonwealth. And whereas Ms. Erin Pratt, a student at Cheyney University, has effectively and thoughtfully represented this community since July 2018, and whereas during her tenure, Ms. Pratt enthusiastically contributed as an active, engaged, and articulate voice on issues spanning the P16 spectrum, and whereas Ms. Pratt served as a student leader on campus, maintained a distinguished academic record, and displayed a passion for academic inquiry through her pursuit of research opportunities, now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Council of Higher Education and the entire State Board of Education extend their best wishes to Ms. Pratt in her future endeavors. Given under my hand and our seal the 6th day of May 2020, and it's to be signed by our chair, Karen Farmer White. And by the way, I want to say that Erin was a wonderful member, and we're going to miss her. She is a stone's throw from me. I could probably look out my window right now and see Cheyney University from where I'm sitting. It's a wonderful institution, and they've really been working so very hard, both pre and post COVID-19, to ensure both the longevity of their institution, as well as academic excellence. And students like Erin really are the most wonderful students who we're able to share with our state board and with Cheyney as a community. So congratulations, and we're going to miss Erin as well.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for the well wishes and the nice things that you've said. Honestly, coming into it, I never thought I would be doing something like this, but it was a very fruitful experience. I got to learn a lot, and just being in places that I never thought I would be. Yeah, I am very excited to graduate. I also just found out that I'm going to be valedictorian for my class, which is very exciting.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Congratulations
Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just excited for my next steps on my journey to eventually go into medical school to become a psychiatrist. So yes.
Good. After that, you could study all of us.
That's hopeless.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution honoring Ms. Pratt?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Erin. Okay, finally, I'd like to call up a resolution honoring Ashley Sveck. I'd like to ask Dr. Keeling to read the resolution for the record.
Thank you. The resolution honoring Ashley Sveck, State Board of Education student member 2018 through 2020. Whereas on May 22nd, 2008, the Pennsylvania State Board of Education amended its bylaws to provide for student membership and greater student voice in education policymaking. And whereas this policy ensures dedicated representation for the more than 1.8 million students enrolled in public schools across the Commonwealth. And whereas Ms. Ashley Sveck, currently a senior at Norwin High School, has been a thoughtful voice in articulately representing the interests of Pennsylvania students since July 2018. And whereas Ms. Sveck's tenure builds on an impressive record of accomplishment as a student council leader, member of the National Honor Society, and competitive dance champion. And whereas Ms. Sveck displays maturity and strength of character in her conduct and an earnest dedication to academic excellence, Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Council of Basic Education and the entire State Board of Education extend their best wishes for Ms. Sveck's continued success in her collegiate endeavors. Given under my hand and are sealed this 6th day of May 2020 to be signed by Karen Farmer White, Chair. And I would just like to offer my congratulations. Ashley has actually been a member of the board for a few months longer than I have. So I've been getting to know her over the past couple of years. We just wish you the best in your future studies for cardiovascular perfusion.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution honoring Ms. Speck?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. I'd just like to say that our student members have been most valuable since I didn't know what year it started, but I was on the NASB board when we, decided when we got the grant to start including student representatives in our board. And I think that Aaron and Ashley are examples of the value that's been added. And so I wish them well in their future and thank you for your service.
Thank you guys all for the amazing opportunity and for everything. This has been a great 2 years. I'm so sad that it's ended, but thank you all so much.
You're welcome.
Keep dreaming.
Okay, are there any announcements for the board before we adjourn? Okay, I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the State Board of Education. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned, and thank you for all you do for the state and hanging in there today. Thank you.
Karen and Stephanie, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Karen and Stephanie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great job.
Thank you all.
Take care.
Okay.
Be well,
Have a great day,
everyone.
everybody. Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Congratulations, Ashley.